OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, banging 7:30 Wednesday morning. Johnny's here. Johnny, how are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
We're going to talk about Shamrock Rovers in a moment, but before we do, it's All Ireland final week. Owen is gone. He's gone. We've replaced Kerry with Galway in studio today.
Yeah, where is Owen? He's on the circuit, is he? Yeah.
The chicken and chips. He's stitching the seeds of his future political career into the crevices of the country.
Yeah, he's going to be in for a hell of a battle on Sunday, I think. It's building up nicely. A lot of good coverage in the paper today.
What if you don't show up? Surely you have that fear.
Galway?
Surely you do have a fear that you might be the backdrop to the concerto that is the coming out party for the greatest footballer of all time. Because that's what we're talking about. He has the potential to be the greatest footballer of all time. That's what we're talking about with Clifford.
Yeah.
He's like...
He does.
That far down the line.
He does. It's going to be interesting for Galway to see what they do with the Kerry attack in general. But interestingly, I see in the Irish Daily Mail today they had the best 15 players. Just got an interest from the two teams put together, and
combined
it was
15,
8 and 7. Yes, hell of a team now. 8 and 7. So outfielders actually is 7 each. So that gives you an impression of the quality that Galway have. The two Cliffords in it. Obviously, Galway's two marquee forwards there as well. They've kind of fitted in Paul Conroy into the half-forward line to kind of solve a problem there. David Moran gets in, so that's interesting as well. It's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be, and everyone I speak to in Galway seems to be very, very hopeful. Everyone I speak to outside of Galway thinks Kerry will win.
What's the ticket scramble like?
Not bad actually.
Everybody got tickets. It seems like everybody being away on holidays when the All-Ireland final is on is good for the ticket hunters.
Yeah, well, there were tickets available for the hurling like 2 hours beforehand on Ticketmaster, which was I never remember anything like that. I think the cost of living is definitely having some sort of an influence, and if you are living in Dublin, don't be afraid to put up like a bed for somebody that may want to stay Saturday or Sunday night, because it's extremely expensive in Dublin.
How many do you have staying with you?
2 at the moment, sister and
14 by the end of it.
Yeah, it was good. I was
like a J1 gaff in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit old for that now, but at the same time, I haven't actually partied after any of the football or hurling games really this year. So maybe Sunday could be the breakout. Who knows what'll happen? I'm going to turn down any work on Monday that I'm offered anyway.
Well, what if you win?
Well, exactly.
You'd want to be wandering around telling everybody how great you are, no?
It's strange to be back after 21 years for Galway. It's football has moved on an awful lot since 2001, but I guess the fundamentals are the same. The game will probably be decided by which of these marquee forwards has more of an influence. Interesting, I think it was mentioned in one of the pieces I read today that I think Shane Walsh has only scored like 1-6 or 1-7 from play this year in the championship. He's been he was brilliant obviously in the Connacht final, but he is so tightly marked that his actual scoring rate isn't that high, but we'll see how he performs. I didn't think he had a great semi-final. I thought that Derry marked him very well. I think he and Finnerty will have a better game on Sunday, and we'll probably need to.
Well, they absolutely need to if you're going to win. You're feeling relatively confident though.
Yeah, I think what I feel with Galway is that they've come through 2 games where they were, holding on or kind of came through difficult situations. Obviously, the Mayo game and the Derry game, and their Mar game. I thought in the Derry game their composure was good, because in the first half they'd only scored a point after about half an hour, and they hadn't really been in this situation before playing All Ireland semi-final. They might have had to deal with some doubts, but they didn't. They just looked. I think the Keane O'Neill influence was it's a factor in some of the articles today. There's a good piece in the Star, I think, about Keane O'Neill and the role he's had, and I think it's quite humbling of Pádraig Joyce to say, and I always like a manager who says that he needed a bit of help, or he needed to evolve on the job. And I think Joyce has said that I needed a bit of help, and Keane O'Neill has been a great help to me. S&C coach has been a great help, and I think you see with John Kiley and Limerick's success, delegation is very important. It's not all about the manager at all.
Yeah, especially now, obviously.
And you're obviously a big Keane O'Neill fan.
Well, I think that it's really unfortunate that he's not involved with Kildare at some level. I know, obviously, people will say, well, he had his chance at the big job, but I'm sure it turns out there's loads of roles within a backroom team that he could have been important. And I definitely feel like we're missing something like that director of football style to oversee everything from the under-12 development squads all the way up to the senior team. But
he's living in Limerick now, which is
he's
based down there, so it's obviously Galway's not the worst spin from.
Head of sport in one of the universities. Rick Jagger says, thanks be to Johnny Ward, and then the little praying emoji. So you've become a spiritual figure in Rick Jagger's life.
Morning, Rick. It's been a strange morning getting up, because when I saw the sunshine, I was like, oh, I'll cycle in, and it's actually gotten about 20 degrees colder, or feels that. Anyway.
Yeah, but it was still really hot. Like
it was actually cycling in now. It's not warm at all. It's like there's the cold breezes there.
I cycled in a t-shirt this morning.
What time?
6:30.
Yeah, it's like I struggle. I've been struggling to sleep now the last few nights with that dead heat.
No one's sleeping. Everyone's a bit narky and a little bit strung out, which is not what you want in the week of an All-Ireland final.
No,
you want a little bit of rest. Less tired and less emotional.
Well, did you see Nicky Quaid when in the warm up Sunday? He was really struggling to just pour to wipe the sweat off his face. He took off the helmet, and I didn't hear much back after the game. But how did they find the heat? The players, it looked, wearing helmets looked very tough. And in the Tour de France, how they're cycling up hills in this heat in France is just, I think it's borderline inhumane what they're doing. But they're doing it, and they're in the Pyrenees today, I think. So very, very tough hilly climb for them today. I think the weather just might be turning a bit there as well.
Cooler at the top of the mountain, maybe.
Yeah, there is that as well. So it's funny when you're cycling, as you know, Ger, when you're going sort of fast into downhill. The air just kind of cools you down, but climbing in conditions like this is torture, absolute torture. And
has it been a vintage Tour de France?
Yeah, so Jonas Vingegaard has wrestled favourite from Pogacar, who would have been the favourite. Pogacar, one of the stages last week, he was smiling at the camera about 10k out, but I think I don't know, was it that day or the day before, where they finished with sort of a 10k finish and an incline of about 10%, which is just animal. And Pogacar just faded on that stage, so he's been sort of trying to catch Vingegaard ever since. There's a bit of cat and mouse with him, and he's had issues with his teammates crying off as well. So I think they're at 16 or 17 today, which is into the Pyrenees. Very, very tough finish. The last sort of 65k have 3 or 4 category 1 climbs, I think, on them. So it'll be a tough day today, and I just hope for their sake the heat is down a bit. It's been bad week,
but not too late to tune in if you want to get on board.
No, not at all. And I think, as I've said this before, I work from home a lot. I love having it on the background, and you hear Sean Kelly and the guys having the crack and just talking about their experiences of the tour. And even though obviously it's spread out over several hours, there's actually quite a lot going on at times, and you see some mad breakaways, and just is it the toughest sport in the world?
God, I think the Tour de France is very...
Oh my God, if you cycle at all and you do 5 minutes of a tough workout, and then you think that they do this for hours in 40-degree heat and much more energy given, I don't know.
Well, the recovery from falls as well. It's I broke my collarbone. I cycled on.
And they'll do some monumental effort one day and literally do it again the next day. But I do wonder, the Tour de France, if we have a situation, if this is going to become the norm in terms of the summer that we've had, I don't think you can continue cycling going forward in that weather. I think it'll cause serious problems for cyclists, because it's just it's not normal. And it'll be interesting to see what the feedback is from the riders in the Tour. How you climb for hours in 40-degree heat, and you've issues with having to rehydrate. Obviously, you have to get your team to give you water. And I don't know. I know some of the riders are struggling. I don't think there have been any serious injuries from it, but I don't know if that's sustainable going forward. And I've saying this to a few people this week. There will be parts of Europe now where people are dreading the summer, basically, because if it's going to be 40 degrees all the time, nobody wants that.
And fire. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. It's 7:40. Sue Ronan is going to join us in 15 minutes to talk about the Euros reaching the quarter-final stage. It looks like football's coming home. Andy McEntee at 10:08 is going to join us in studio to talk about the Antrim job and preview the Ireland football final. Look at sports pages and sports news from John Duggan. Lee Keegan's coming in at 8:50. Barry John Keane at 9:10, and John Bruin is going to talk about the scramble that has been Manchester United's summer transfer policy, in particular around their desire to get Frenkie de Jong from Barcelona. We should talk about what happened with Shamrock Rovers last night. Another chastening night for Irish football in Europe, where we're the technically superior Eastern European team. Like, this is the narrative that we grew up with in the 80s and 90s. You'd wake up and you'd hear about the 3-0 defeat that an Irish team suffered in European football, or 5-0 or 7-0. And it would always be like, oh, they're technically superior. And like, well, that's a bit cliche, isn't it? But
yeah,
were they technically superior?
Yeah,
were they,
they were just vastly superior. Like, Ludogorets, in fairness, they've dominated Bulgarian football. They've made a habit of qualifying for the Champions League or the Europa League group stages, so that would put them ahead of Shamrock Rovers, who haven't, under Stephen Bradley, been to the group stages of any of the competitions yet. And the Champions League is obviously the one that realistically it's asking a lot in terms of the resources of Ludogorets. They're backed by a billionaire. Not that Rovers aren't as well in terms of Dermot Desmond, but Rovers wouldn't have their resources. Just like a lot would have been made of the third goal that they conceded, because 2-0, they lost 2-0 in Bratislava last year, and they made a real fight of it in Tala, went 2-0 up, gave a really good count themselves. So at 2-0 you're thinking, full house in Tala next week, maybe they'll do something. And a lot was made of the third goal, because Lee Grace gave the ball away in a I think we're talking the 4th minute of injury time. It was just risk versus reward. I mean, it was just a mad goal to give away, and there were a couple of goal-mouth scrambles, and they scored from both of them, Ludogorets. But at the same time, I think we should be realistic. If they were 2-0 down, I mean, the chance of them going through, there are no away goals, which is a help. But even at 2-0, Ludogorets are a good side. Like, they're a good side. They would be comfortable enough, I think, against much better opposition than Shamrock Rovers, and I think they would have been able to up the gears in the second half. The concern for Rovers, and the regret that they'll have, is that Jack Byrne didn't play. He's obviously not fully fit. Graham Burke came on for Dylan Watts after about 65 minutes and made them a million times better than they were in the first half. Danny Mandroyu has left, so these marquee players that you need at this level either are gone or weren't available. And they gave away 2 goals in the first half. They gave them a mountain to climb. The second half they did much better, but it is a kind of it will spark that debate again about the levels of the League of Ireland in terms of what Shamrock Rovers are facing week in, week out, because, being honest, they don't face anything like this.
Has the gap closed? Is the summer football getting better, or has the difficulty been that the quality of the football here has improved, and so therefore we've become a great recruitment ground for lower tier teams in English football? Like, the double-edged sword is that we got much better, but that has just meant that a lot of our best players now leave.
Yeah, I don't really have an issue with players leaving to go to...
I mean, I don't have an issue with them leaving, but it's a fact.
No, I don't.
It's going to reduce the quality of the team.
I don't think. I mean, this might sound counterintuitive, but I think it's at one level damaging to the league when you lose players like Dara Burns and Danny Mandroyu and Promise O'Mashare. These are players that are effectively going to League One teams. On the one level, that's bad, but on the other level, League One is big, and it's bigger than the League of Ireland. And it's I think a lot of English clubs now see that there's talent in Ireland. And if you want to develop players in Ireland and they see England as the next step up the ladder, that's fine for the time being. We're certainly in transition. We're still a league that's trying to better itself and do better over the next few years, but it's difficult to match the resources that they have in leagues where some teams get like 40,000 at their games. So the English tiered structure is still attractive to Irish players to go over there, see can they build up the ladder. And unfortunately, it is a bit of a product of the success that the Irish clubs have had. That they are wanted in England, and with the Brexit situation, they're obviously not going over to the Red now.
Yeah, and they're going all around Europe as well. I guess. We haven't seen the fruits of the improved football in European terms just yet, or the fruits of summer football in European terms.
No, we would have definitely. Like, I think what probably we don't understand much in Ireland is that other leagues are definitely improving as well. So like you have to if the League of Ireland had stood still 15, 20 years ago, it'd be in a bad state now, because like you're coming up against teams.
Well, it probably went backwards 15 years ago.
It went backwards after the implosion of the crash and all that.
Yeah, 15 years ago with Shells in.
These were, in fairness, these were clubs that were spending beyond their means, to borrow Charlie's phrase, and they obviously, then there was a hit, and you know, I think the league suffered badly. But it's like when you talk about Dundalk's European run, Shamrock Rovers getting to the group stage of the Europa League before them, but even Bohemians' performances last year, there are some very good green shoots, but you do need to keep improving. And Shamrock Rovers last night, it's a reminder of where we need to go, because they were well beaten. Like, let's be honest, they're well beaten, and you can make excuses for players not playing and all that, but they'd hardly any chances. XG would probably suggest 3-0 was fair enough, and it's a reminder that you've a long way to go. Shamrock Rovers are dominating Irish football, but last night in Bulgaria they were well beaten, and that's where we're at.
There's a good piece today, I think it might be Mark McCadden, I'm not sure, has it, with Zach Albazetti, talking about his time with AIK in Stockholm. And it's like players like that, if they were all playing in the League of Ireland, you would have a team that could compete. Last night, is that fair?
Yeah, well, in fair, like Elba said, he was playing in the League of Ireland and he did well. But again, like, he's young and he was playing for the 21, so he took you mentioned the European route. Not many would have gone to Scandinavia, but he did go that route. But I mean, there's no real way like that the Irish teams can hold on to these players going forward at the moment. We just need more money in the league, and that's going to take time. Shamrock Rovers pay their players quite well, but the lure is always going to be there to go and try at a higher level, and Sweden is a higher level than the League of Ireland, so that's why Elbazetti is there. And maybe it's, you know, a lot has been said about the modest fee that Fleetwood apparently are paying for Promise Oma Share, but again, I mean, you know, you factor in sort of add-ons and sell-ons in these deals, and there isn't much else you can do. If the player wants to go, the player wants to go, and England will still be that lower. Okay, so what are your expectations for the rest of the League of Ireland teams for the European season? Yeah, so Pats start off their Conference League campaign on Thursday. Derry City, I thought, were very disappointing. They went out 4-0, and a lot has been made about their performance under Rory Higgins. Riga were good, but they were nowhere near Ludogorets, and they lost 4-0 in aggregate. Thought they were very poor. Sligo Rovers absolutely limped in. They were really poor against Ballatown, who they should be beaten.
And they've got Motherwell next.
They've got Motherwell, which that'll be very interesting. I think they might, they might feel that they got out of jail, which they did against Ballatown. But again, this is the whole thing, Ger. They beat Ballatown because of their goalkeeper Ed McEntee, who's now leaving. So they have to, start again. I think they'll do better against Motherwell. Pat's one is kind of hard to know, but I think for Rovers' real level this year is not the Champions League. It's like the Europa League playoff that they'll likely play next, or the conference playoff, which they'll be in a playoff to get into the conference group stages, and that's like worth about £3 million, I think, and that's realistic. It's asking a lot of them to beat Ludogorets, who've like literally been consistently in the group stages when Shamrock Rovers aren't in group stages at all.
All right, okay. Rick Jagger says, sleep with an ice pack between your legs. It makes a big difference, lads.
I was cycling in Cork on Saturday morning and stopped off in a shop in Coachford, I think, and like literally just bought a bag of ice and put it between my legs, and as I was leaving gave it to these other cyclists who'd arrived, and they were delighted with themselves. It was getting very hot, and the ice was the ice pack. There's nothing. Is there a better feeling than ice on a warm day?
Yeah, no, okay, no, I'm in.
Do you try the cold hot water bottle? What do you do? I'm outside the covers pretty much all year anyway, and this year, obviously, what I noticed last night was, like, I was in bed for 10 minutes just reading, and I was sweating. Like, I hadn't moved, and I was finding very uncomfortable outside the covers. I'm sure you all want to hear this.
There you go. Ice between the legs.
What do we do about air? Like, are we going to need aircon in house in Ireland now going forward?
Yes, I mean, it's fairly obvious it's all coming, right?
The situation in Britain where their rail system isn't actually built for heat, so they had to just cancel trains, which is understandable because, like, Britain does not experience 40-degree heat until now. Where are we going with this?
Well, we all know where we're going. We're all pretending we don't know where we're going, but we do know where we're going. Jack O'Connor's in all the papers today talking about how he's fortunate because he's retired from his day job and it's now effectively a semi-professional gig. You need to be at it full time. Strong rumours swept the country last night that Brian Cody was going to retire today, by the way, so we're keeping a close eye on that this morning. But he's also a man who is now no longer teaching and has retired too. Do you have to be? Is that what we're saying? That you need to own your own business, and so therefore be able to somehow manage your own resources, or can you work and be an inter-county manager?
I'd say what Jack said. You could completely see what he's saying there. It's practically professional without being professional. And I mean, we had Andy Moran on, who's the Leitrim manager, and with all due respect to Leitrim, you know, your expectations are nowhere near what you would get in Kerry. But he was basically saying that it's all encompassing, and there's very little time, and no wonder that, you know, being retired helps. I don't know how. I think Jack's point was that you can't do both. You can't do both jobs, as in a day job and an inter-county manager job, to the best of your ability. And I would imagine that's 100% true. It is obviously the elephant in the room in Gaelic games is the whole managerial situation, but it's a hell of a demanding job. And as Jack says there, and spoke about McEntee and all that, you know, you do have to put up with a lot of pressure, a lot of criticism, social media, and so on and so forth. And it's challenging, and it's a full-time job pretty much.
Not particularly sustainable.
No.
You're not going to get a very diverse range of characters in the end who are doing these jobs. Like, you're going to just end up with the same cohort of people, or people from the same walk of life and background who are doing it.
Yeah, and
unless we professionalise it, but obviously nobody wants professionalism, do they? I mean, maybe we do.
Yeah, I don't know. I still, you'd wonder how attractive the job is, particularly in those counties who have no chance of winning the All-Ireland, and they might play like a provincial game. There'll be a couple of thousand people at it. They lose out in the you know, there isn't even necessarily that much interest in a lot of these counties day to day, and they have to travel and so on and so forth.
Their hope is that the Tailteann Cup addresses some of that,
which I think it will.
And the scenes from the Westmeath players celebrating their victory, I think, is more important than anything else that happened. They obviously valued the competition, and that's enough to.
So did Cavan. Like, it was I think it says we know we will have Lee Keegan on, but I thought he spoke brilliantly about, for somebody who always dined at the top table, how much it meant to him just to be able to watch the Tailteann Cup. And I feel there are an awful lot of inter-county players. You saw Louth's resurgence this year. Like, you get a great kick out of that, and you see small hurling counties doing well. I think a lot of people get a great kick out of that than seeing the same teams all the time. And there are very good players out there, and they need that kind of showcase to be able to show it. Like,
yeah. Now, the other aspect to all this is that David Hardy was on yesterday saying the split season's great because you can give inter-county management your all for 6 to 8 months, and then you've got 4 months of not downtime but like
relative.
Yeah. Your job is to go and watch the club scene and read and learn and recharge. So maybe that whole full-time thing is a little bit overblown, because I mean, it's obviously been full-time for him since he got it, but now he's going to have essentially 6 months before they're back training again.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We had Jeff Linsky doing the game on Sunday. It was I thought he was brilliant, actually. Like, I hadn't really heard him do much in the media before, but he's manager Lee Mellows now. They start in the championship, I think, in 2 weeks, and he was really extolling the fixture list. He said, this is great, like, it's we're in July and we can kind of focus on the club now and all that. And I know there's been a lot of flack, and I think the crowds have been hit for a myriad of reasons. One of them probably is the quick turnaround in games. I think some people aren't really able to afford or unwilling to afford come to games in quick succession, and I think there have been issues there. Like, it was amazing that you could get tickets for the All-Ireland final on the day, but the fixture list, I think a lot of people at the club level, and bear in mind club level dominates Gaelic football, that's where most people play, the vast majority. I think they're fairly happy with things. Alright,
just to go back to the game of the weekend, give me your prediction now, and I'm going to stick you to it, keep you to it.
Very close.
That's not a prediction. That's like a
Galway. What are you thinking?
I think that we're going to see the coronation of the king,
David Clifford,
his coming out party, his signature performance on the cards. I think there's a possibility the game's over at half time.
Stop, Ger.
I do. I think that there's and it's nothing against Galway. It's just that Kerry have been coming for 3 seasons. Like, they've been coming since the All-Ireland final, where they drew against the greatest team of all time, and then just narrowly lost the replay, and then had the shock defeat the following year, and then had a shock defeat last year where if they'd got over Tyrone. If Clifford hadn't got injured, I think they would have beaten Tyrone.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. They fell over the line against a Dublin team that is without Conor Callaghan and is definitely not the team it was. And Galway, I think if you look at the form lines, Galway have beaten, apart from, I mean, if you look at the Mayo kind of collateral form, Kerry should win. Armagh, Kerry would be beating Armagh, Kerry would be beating Derry. I just think Galway are full of confidence. I think they've no fear.
I hope you're right, and I hope that we do get a proper game.
Shades of 98 now in the Senate, without bringing it up. Shades of 98 because Galway were 3-1 outsiders to beat Kildare, I think. But everyone in the county seemed to, from what I remember, there was great belief in the county. And it's quite similar now where everyone in the county, everyone I speak to in Galway is very, very confident of it. They're going to do well.
Yeah, I do think the difference now is that your best players will be marked. There will be someone whose job it is to stop them doing
John
stuff.
Bannon won't give a controversial free against McCormack for charging by Divley. I always remind him of that when I see him at Roscommon races. I think he gave us a soft enough free that day. And,
it was a turning point.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, that was the turning point in the game. But do you remember? Do you know? I suppose the one thing, there was so much hype in Kildare at that time. Do you remember how mad that summer was? And Kildare were finally going to win All Ireland. I think in Kerry, like, they've so much going on in Kerry between tourism and everything else. They're always just chilled out. It's not going to get to there.
They're not chilled out. The rumour mill is in overdrive.
They're relaxed. They don't even go to the game until the final.
The rumours are that like a load of lads had COVID, and that a load of lads were injured, and that a load of lads were fighting with each other. That the constant explosive hype.
Yeah.
And then it turns out actually looks like everybody's going to be fit and available for selection
after the bumps and bruises, as Jack would say.
Yeah. Right. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're turning our attention to the women's Euros with the quarterfinal starting tonight as England play Spain. I'm delighted to say we're joined in the line now by the former Republic of Ireland manager Sue Ronan to talk through the 4 matches. Sue, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
How are you? How are you keeping?
Good, yeah. I don't know, is it a fear really anymore? I think probably it's really good for the women's game if England do win this competition, particularly given a lot of our best players are going to end up playing league football with them next season. But there's a few hard games for them to navigate, and the Spanish team who stand in England's way tonight might put it up to them.
Yeah, I definitely think, to answer your first question, I definitely think it would be good for the game if England win the tournament. I think it would be good for us here. It would definitely have a knock-on effect. We have many of our players playing in the league over there, as you know, and I suppose that's the first port of call for many of them looking to go professional. It's close by, it's there's no language barriers, it's close to home, no food barriers, all those type of things, and it's the best league in the world, more importantly. But going back to the second question, I mean, they have been by far the strongest team in the competition so far, and it's been a fantastic competition. Records have tumbled on and off the pitch. There's been record high attendances, numbers of goals scored, numbers of searches on website, number of attendances, all that type of thing. But more importantly, the football has been absolutely superb. I mean, it's gone up a level. Every major tournament, we're seeing it go up a notch, and England are certainly the front runners in that, or the leaders in that. And yes, they have a tough game, a tough quarterfinal against Spain. Spain play a different style of football. They play the typical Spanish, short, small, intricate passing, very Barcelona style. Many of their players actually play for Barcelona. But they've struggled to score in this tournament, and they're missing 2 of their key players. They're missing Hermosa, who's their out and out number 9, and the Ballon d'Or player, Patelas, their number 10, both injured just before the tournament. So they're huge losses to them. But, watching them, I watched them live against Germany, and Germany were just so clinical against them and ruthless. 2 chances, and they were 2-0 up in no time. Spain probably had a lot of the ball, most of the ball that game. But they didn't really penetrate the final third. It was, as I mentioned, all that short, sharp passing. We're going lateral across the pitch. So I can't really see them hurting this England team. I think England have too many goals in them. They can score from anywhere. They can spring players from the bench who are really performing just as well as the starting 11. England are going to have a huge crowd, a noisy crowd. They're on a high. So, yeah, for me, I think England are going to win this game.
Is there any concern that England haven't quite been tested by the opponents that they faced yet? I mean, they should have been, but it turns out they were too strong for their opponents so far.
Yeah, for sure. They haven't been tested defensively. I mean, they beat Norway 8-0, and that was the game I suppose everyone thought they were going to be tested in. They struggled a little bit more against Austria. It was only 1-0, and Austria did go at them, and put it up to them early doors. And then they beat Northern Ireland well. I think the centre of the defence for me has been a bit soft over the years. That's been their Achilles heel. They're so good in midfield. Their top 4 or 5 players are so good. As I mentioned, you could play any player there. 1-4 could play this game, and another 4 from the bench could play the next game, and they'd be equally as strong and equally as good. And they're scoring goals from everywhere. So they haven't been tested. So what way they'll set up, I'm not really sure. Spain will go at them anyway. Spain won't sit in and sit in the defensive block and hope to catch them on the counter-attack. That's not the way they play. Whereas, when England are defending, they're quite likely to be able to catch Spain on the counter, because that's where teams have been catching them, and that's where Germany caught them. But pardon me, they haven't been tested, so it'll be interesting to see how they cope with that. But I do just think they're getting stronger and more confident as the tournament's going on.
It's going to be a good, very good kind of advertisement of the game as well, this.
For sure, it really is. And as I said, when you look at the level of football and the way it's been played, I mean, Lauren Hemp, who plays wide, and normally wide on the left, but she can switch to wide on the right. She's only 21 years of age, and she's won Young Player of the Year for the last 4 years in a row in the Women's Super League. And what a talent she is. And she'd remind you of the old-fashioned centre forward. She has pace. She gets down the line, gets crosses in off her right foot, off her left foot, pinpoint crosses. And you'd love to be a centre forward, playing with her in the team. You have Georgia Stanway, who was the captain of the under-20s when they got beaten in the World Cup final in 2019, and I think she's one of their underestimated players. She's driving that team on from the number 10 position, or the advanced midfield position. She's probably not getting all the limelight that some of the others do, but she stepped up now and taken, I think, 2 penalties in this tournament, no problem, put them away for a young girl, only 21 years of age. But yeah, I mean, I think that the football they're playing, football many of the teams are playing, it's really superb and it's great to see.
Just the hurling on Sunday, Sue, like you can imagine future Limerick hurlers are 8 or 9 years of age now celebrating on Sunday, and they have their dreams now. Like a lot of Galway hurlers would have come through from watching the team that Joe Canning and all that. There must be some amount of young kids who are like so inspired by this and who are going to be like make it their goal now to be a professional footballer and to play for their country down the line.
Absolutely, and of course you see that in England because they're doing so well and there's such a high profile to the game over there, but you're also seeing it now here as well because our own national team, there's such a high profile around them. They're playing such great football, they're connected to the fans, as we mentioned the last time I was here. So kids can see it now, and we always use that tagline, you can't see it, you can't be it, and they absolutely can see it. And the fact they're seeing such great football on the TV. I mean, I have my own nieces even who don't play football, but they're so inspired by watching girls playing in a full stadium, and everything that goes with what you would normally see in a men's game. And that for sure does inspire them. And I mean, I heard it was Peter O'Mahony after the All Blacks, Ireland beat the All Blacks last week. That was the first thing he said when he was interviewed. This is going to inspire the next generation. And that's what happens,
Yeah, they obviously feel that and they obviously speak about that too, and I'm sure that's been part of the whole thing about this England team and a home tournament and legacy. The one kind of little wrinkle for all this is that their manager tested positive for COVID last week and wasn't on the bench for the last game. Talk that she might be on the bench for the game tonight. I haven't seen an update on that just yet, but is that important? It kind of feels like it might be important.
Yeah, if she's not on the bench, she is a big loss. I did hear yesterday she may not be, but I'm not sure. I think the isolation period in England is a little bit different than here, so potentially if she tests negative, she may be. But she is a loss. But from what I gather, she's still keeping connected. I'm sure she's still at team meetings, via virtually as such. She obviously can't be on the training pitch, I'm sure, or I don't know, maybe she can be in isolation, but I'm sure she's not. But yeah, she's a big loss. But look, I think her assistants and her whole team around her, they've all worked together for a long time. I'm sure she's still directing the show, and they're just such a close-knit team now, and they know exactly what they want, and she's just brought something else to them that they didn't have before. So it will be a loss for sure. I think especially if things are not going right, maybe, she's the one that can change it. But I think from listened to Arya and her assistant after the last match. He was connected to her during the whole game, and I'd imagine that'd be the same thing if she's not there tonight.
What system does she play? Is she stereotypical Dutch?
Yeah, she seems to play that Dutch system, the 4-3-3, but it's a flexible one. You can have two holding midfielders with three advance and then one top striker, or you can have your wide players high and wide, and with two advanced midfielders, which she tends to do. She's had Fran Kirby and Georgia Stanway in two advanced, say 8 and 10 roles, with Ciara Walsh as being the holding player just in front of the centre halves. Her fullbacks get forward, as the Dutch fullbacks always do. And I mean, that's a trend in the game now anyway. Fullbacks are really a big part of the attack and play. And then obviously there's a lot of movement up front. As I said, these players are so good. They're all versatile. The wingers can change sides. Centre forward tends to stay. Ellen White tends to stay centrally. Obviously, if she's up front on her own, she'll make runs into the channels, but you don't see her playing out in the wing for any period of time. But yeah, like they really are. They're a very, very strong team, and they're flamboyant and they're versatile and they're fluid. So it really is. It's a pleasure to watch them.
So they're going to win tonight. That's your prediction?
I think they will win tonight. Yeah, I can't see them not scoring goals. And will Spain even score? I'm not even sure Spain will score. I can see them winning maybe 2-0 or 3-1 tonight.
And England and Germany are different sides as Ross is that right?
Yes, they are. So, and again, I suppose for the tournament, that's lucky because they're the best two teams in the tournament to date, although the French might have a different view on that. But again, I saw Germany live twice there in Brentford in the group games, and I hadn't seen Germany for a few years, and you're probably aware they would have won the Euros 5 times in a row, up between, I think, 2003, 2015. Then they went into a bit of a downward spiral. They've had to rebuild. They've had a couple of different coaches, all sorts of things. And every team, I guess, goes through eventually. So they weren't really getting anywhere in major tournaments. Quarterfinals was the furthest they were getting. I think in the last Euros and the last World Cup, that's as far as they got. And surprisingly, they were beaten actually in a World Cup game there in the last couple of months against Serbia, which is unheard of. But I've since read they had a lot of players missing with COVID and different things, but they're still winning that World Cup group. But I was just struck by how they look like their old selves. They were strong, they were powerful, they were physical, they were slick in their passing, they were direct, clinical, ruthless, all that type of thing. So for me, they're the second best team in the tournament at the moment. Austria, who they play, that's tomorrow night. Austria have done really great to qualify, as you mentioned, from England's group against all the odds, especially at the expense of that highly fancied Norway team. But do they have enough to upset Germany? And most of their players play in Germany, so they'll be familiar, but I don't think they really do. I mean, their only key player, I guess, or their main key player is their goalkeeper who plays for Arsenal as well, and she's done really well, but I think Germany will have too much for them.
It's interesting about the German rebuild. It's obviously from a massive playing base and with the background of the success that they've had. But like all these teams do struggle at some point. When they play England, if they play England in the final, who would end up being the favourites heading into that game?
I think England are still the favourites. So the home nation. I think they could even be ranked ahead of Germany just at the moment. I think England will probably be favourites. Well, put it this way, their own press will definitely make them favourites, and with that will come more pressure, of course. But you can never rule out Germany, and like what Germany have, England don't have. Germany have experience of winning those tournaments, and the last time England were in the European finals, it was 2009, and again I was at that game, and they were destroyed by Germany in the first half. I think they were 4-0 down before they could even blink. Now they were at a different level than they are now, and Germany were at a different level. They're opposite ends of the spectrum, but England had big hopes going into the tournament, and of course they had that pressure from home that they were going to do something, but within a blink of an eye the game was over. They eventually lost 5-2. You had the great Birgit Prince playing in those days. So Germany know how to win tournaments, and nobody's been talking about them coming into this. So I think that's been in their favour. They're sort of quietly going about their business. Yeah. But I still think England will be favourites, and everyone will make them the favourites. But look, when it gets to that stage, anything can happen. I still think England will win, but you can't rule the Germans out. The
hype would be off the chart if that was to happen, if we could have an England-Germany final. Sweden against Belgium, this game you think is going to be pretty close?
I think so. This one could go all the way to penalties. I think Sweden haven't been firing on all cylinders. And so this game really is the most open of all the quarterfinals for me. It's interesting. Sweden, the teams that they've played apart from Portugal have sat deep against them. Obviously, trying to contain the Swedes and trying to get a result. And Sweden have really found it hard to break them down. Their top players haven't performed at the top level yet. Blackstenius, who's with Arsenal, great young player who normally scores goals for fun. I think she might have scored one to date. Aslani, who's with Real Madrid, Rolfo, Barcelona, those players, Eriksson, their captain, who's with Chelsea. They just haven't hit the ground running just yet, but they do get better as tournaments go on. I mean, they've got to this stage now, and that's all you need to do. You don't have to set the world on fire, I guess, in the quarters or in the group games. It matters now in the knockout games. But against Belgium, who will sit deep against them and who sat deep against Italy until they had to go and win the game, it'll be an interesting one, this one. So I think this could go to extra time and penalties.
All right, and then France versus Netherlands is the fourth quarter final. And the good thing is that these are night by night, so there's no double games at this stage. You get to watch all of them.
For sure, and they're a nice time for people to watch as well after work, 8 o'clock kickoff. France have a very exciting team and loads of exciting players. You have Cascarino up front, Diani, the pace they have in the wide positions. Their striker who's starting to score goals, Kitato. I mean, there was controversy about her. She was left out of the World Cup squad, but she's back in this time. But France, for me, France have a bit of a soft centre. I'm not sure they have the bottle or the metal, whatever you want to say, to actually go to go as far as their team suggests they can. Something just seems to happen to them when the pressure's on them and everyone expects them to do better. There's always seems to be a bit of conflict with French teams as well, and those players left out, and some players think they should be in, and the manager obviously picks who she thinks is right for the squad. So there just seems to be a bit of a conflict there. Will they beat the Netherlands? I think that'll be a close one as well. It's hard to call that one because the Netherlands likewise haven't been firing on all cylinders yet. But again, they know how to win tournaments. They've won the 2017 edition. Miedema will be important for them. She's missed now the last 2 games with COVID. It'll be interesting to see how fit she is. I hear they just lost Martins through injury. Now, she wasn't playing well anyway. She's been out, I think, for a year with injury, so maybe not too much of a loss at the moment. Their goalkeeper has really stood up. She came in for their captain in the first game who went off injured, and she's Van Domselaar. She's looked really good. So hard to call that one. Really hard to call that one, to be honest with you. I'd say it'll go to extra time, and I couldn't even call who's going to win it, to be honest with you, at the moment.
The Norwegian manager stepped down during the week after his team crashed out.
Yes.
Bit of a surprise that they crashed out so early, but I suspect that if you have a team as talented as that and you don't do much with them, then it's kind of inevitable that you're going to end up leaving.
I think so, yeah. And I think also the way they were beaten, the 8-0 by England really hurt them and would have hurt him a lot and hurt his reputation, I guess, because there was a lot said about the fact he didn't make changes during the game and all that. They were hammered, like they were destroyed by England. They really were. It's just like they fell apart. So they didn't just lose, like they were hammered. So I'm not surprised that change has happened, to be honest. Okay.
So much made of Aga Hegerberg in the build-up, but didn't really perform in the tournament?
No, she didn't. And she didn't look... she didn't. There was so much made of her, and she came back. Obviously, as we know, she retired after the last Euros from international duty because I think she said things weren't right there within the camp or the Norwegian backing or whatever. I don't know what was going on, but anyway, she came back and she seemed to be doing well. She seemed to have settled in, but she never looked comfortable to me. I think her demeanour, even besides the game against England, I just thought there wasn't something right. Now I could be wrong there, but. She definitely didn't perform anyway, and none of the team did. So it's interesting to see what happens there next.
How would we have done if we qualified here?
Do you know what? I've been saying this to myself, and I think we would have done well. Obviously, the group we would have been in, if you look at it the way it was, because Northern Ireland beat Ukraine in the playoff, and we were beaten by Ukraine. So you take it that we would have been in that group. England are definitely on a different level. I think at the moment we would struggle against them like all teams do. Certainly the way Norway have played and the way we're playing at the moment, I wouldn't have feared them. And, I definitely wouldn't have feared Northern Ireland. And that's no disrespect to them. I think we've beaten them on every occasion we've played them for the last 10 years. I think we would have done well. And I look at teams that have come in maybe under the radar, like Austria, like Belgium, and they've performed really well, and other teams you would expect to have done better, like Norway, like Italy, they've been huge disappointment. Finland, again, another team, and again, we talked about it before, these teams were good second seeds a number of years ago. They're now on the slide for me, and we're a team on the up, so I definitely think we would have done well.
If you look at Sweden qualifying for the quarterfinals, like we've played twice against Sweden, they beat us once and we drew with them. Like, you know, we're not a million miles away here from this.
No, we're not a million miles away here, and again, we said it before, we just need to make that breakthrough, you know, and the team is playing with such confidence at the moment and such conviction, and they don't fear anybody, you know, so I think going into a tournament now wouldn't faze them. And you think about what would happen if they did qualify, like, I mean, I'm sure they'd have months of preparation together and all that, so yeah, we just need to get there, and I think we would definitely quit ourselves well. And, you know, if we did qualify for the World Cup, it's harder to get to the World Cup because, 8 or 10 teams come from Europe out of the 32. But when you get there, the group stages are potentially actually a little bit easier. If 32 teams, so you'd have a round of 16, obviously, but you're in with teams from the other confederations. And, like, some of the other confederations are definitely much weaker than Europe, you know,
That's echoed in the men's game now, Susan, where like basically it's kind of easier to win the Euros than the World Cup.
I see it like in the job and the work I'm doing with FIFA. I mean, OFC, Oceania, take for example, New Zealand have qualified for the World Cup as hosts. So therefore you've got the 10 other countries, and they're the likes of the Cook Islands, Solomon Islands, Tahiti, New Caledonia, countries like this, who literally only get together for their qualification tournament. They only appoint, most of them only appoint their national team coach and activate the national team coming up to the qualification tournament. Now, that's something we're trying to change, because that's not good. Obviously, it's not good for the national team, and it's obviously not good for the development of football in those countries. But that's the level they're at, you know. So, you know, one of those is going to have a half chance of going to the World Cup because they'll go into that Confederation playoff that we could potentially end up in. But one of them could make the World Cup. So, you know, really, if we did get to a World Cup, I think it's definitely easier than the Euros. Right.
There's a lot to look forward to. One last thing I want to ask you about is we've talked about Hegerberg there. Who has impressed you then?
Who's impressed me in the tournament so far? I've been really impressed with Hegering. I think that's the way you pronounce her name. Marina Hegering from Germany, centre half. Again, watched her close up, and I was just blown away with her. I hadn't realised she'd been at Arsenal a year or so ago, and I think she didn't maybe do well there. But she was just a super centre half, no nonsense, out and out defender, read the game well, really good distributor of the ball, strong player. She really impressed me. And then in the English team, I think, you know, you have the stars, the Meads, the Hemps, but a couple of the unsung heroes for me are those not getting maybe the same limelight. Walsh has been very good in the middle of the park. Kira Walsh, she's dictating the play, as is that youngster Stanway that I mentioned. So they've really been impressive for me so far.
All right, Sue, great stuff. Enjoy the rest of it. Thanks a million. We'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
That's Sue Ronan giving us a great breakdown of exactly what the situation is at the quarter-final stage of the Euros. That England-Spain game tonight at 8 o'clock, and then there's a game every night at 8 o'clock for the rest of the week. And you can just imagine the hype if the English team keep going.
Yeah, it's really kind of whittling into. It's going to be a hell of a last four after this, because as you mentioned, the Swedes, we've seen them seriously good sides. England with this amazing goal scoring record so far. Germany on the other side of the draw. It could be set for an ambush though tonight. Like England, it's still England. Like, and the expectation will obviously be so great that they're just expected to win tonight. So yeah, it'll be great watching, and I think it's a real coming of age sort of tournament for women's football. Just so much media coverage, great crowds. Really, the standards, as Sue said, they're from a base where you know, I've always made this point. I think women's sport is going to completely explode in the next few years, because it's just starting off a base that doesn't have the history at all of men's sport, and the standards are just improving so fast. It's remarkable, really remarkable. I think a lot of people enjoy watching it more than watching the men's game at times now. It's extremely watchable, and you just imagine the Irish players are just like itching to get to this level at some point.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like, it's very, very annoying that we're not preparing for a quarter-final of the Euros tonight, because we could easily be, and in a game where, anyway, There's no point. Ifs, ands and buts. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod with Paddy James and Tommy previewing this Sunday's All-Ireland football final. They've obviously done the live show last week, which I'm sure you all heard, which was James O'Donoghue's masterclass in comedy. This one is the serious business of the matchups and who's going to mark who. Bit of debate about what's going to happen, particularly who's going to pick up Clifford. James has one theory. He managed, I think, to convince Tommy and Paddy that he might be right. But the Football Pod is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the GA Senior Football Championship. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. Back after this.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yeah. Sean has muted himself, I think. I'm not sure what's going on there. Paul, come on, you come in. You can finish the job from another Bulls fan. Are you standing beside Sean?
Yeah, we're all on the Spars bus. We're not one bit happy. There's 50 of us on this bus and we're not one bit happy.
For immediate reaction from around the grounds, catch League of Ireland late night. Every Friday, 10 p.m. on Twitter Spaces. Follow @OffTheBall.
Did they not need to do that with Dubs? Did they not need to match fire with fire? Like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the half-forward line being an outlet? Are you talking about Clifford and Gainey staying inside? What exactly do you mean by shape?
What I mean is, when you're under pressure and the opposition is gung-ho, coming at you, they're chasing the game like Dublin were, like Mayo always do because their halfbacks are the threat, like Galway are probably going to do at stages. So everyone is going, and you have to track your man. Say the ball goes dead and it's down on the kick-out and you are kind of lumbering back up the field, but you're not in your position yet. So then the ball is played and suddenly you're playing midfield even though you're an inside forward. Your team has lost all the shape. So when you do have possession, you look up, there's no one in there. You turn around, next thing there's traffic on you. You're getting tackled. You might get turned over. You're feeding the wave from the opposition. So if you do get back, it's so important to either
you've got to get back up the pitch,
win a free to give you time, or just do a long bursting run to get back up the field, just to give them more space around that area. Okay. It happens to every team hanging on. Because at the end of the game, you're so tired, you find it so hard to get back up the field. And you know that once you're there, you're probably going to have to come back again. It's like doing a Maz run. Do you know that run where you're doing like 100 meters up and back? Yeah. That's what it's like, but it just has to be done.
But it's also, Jimmy, like, particularly in a final now, like, if you're a point or two up and the clock's going into the red, you're like, that's the difference. Like, it shouldn't, but it does. Like, tactics go out the window. Your job goes out the window there. You're just... Lads are just, I'll do anything, just get back, just jump on lads' backs, foul them, do anything to slow the clock down. Whereas the best teams will have total clarity in those moments. That this is the biggest moments. Yes, there's only a minute left, but this is the win and losing of the game. And this is, like, you look at what, say, Killian McDade did against Armagh, that point he gets where it's on the line and Armagh think they've done it. And Armagh just totally panicked. They just bring everyone back when I think they should have tried and contest the kick out. And then eventually they should have 2 or 3 times in that play, they should have fouled Galway out of range, and they didn't.
He's a Lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Right. It is, 23 minutes past 8 this morning, and like, look, nothing is the worst part of rugby culture than picking Lions teams like 3.5 years before the next Lions tour, right? But when it's Warren Gatlin picking the team, you're going to pay attention. So the Telegraph, hey Warren, pick a Lions team for us, right? Actually, I don't know where the next Lions tour is. Is it Australia? Like, it's 2 years after the next World Cup, so we're 3 years out from it, basically, right? Warren Gatlin picks his 23-man Lions squad, and some of his selections may surprise you. Well, yes, it will.
It's Australia 2025.
There you go, 2025. What are we? 2022 at the moment, so that's not soon. So the team, right? He picked a 23-man squad. And actually, hang on, sorry, is that people there? Yeah, okay. So, the Warren Gatlin's team, Ellis Genge, Jamie George, Tyke Furlong. Right, so far, kind of as expected. James Ryan, who didn't make the plane the last time, straight in the team. Alongside Tyke Byrne, Courtney Laws, Caelan Doris, number 8, Josh van der Fleer.
That's an Irish heavy team.
The halfback partnership, Jameson Gibson Park, Johnny Sexton.
What age did Sexton be then? Like 60 or something?
Well,
40.
This might convince him to elongate his career.
40. Sexton would be 40 at that time.
Quite simply, he has earned the right to be there, even at the age of 37. I think Marcus Smith is something special. But if I want to win a game next week, Johnny has to start. You can't take away from the impact he's had over the last year. In South Africa, I was concerned about his injury record and whether he could get through the tour. And I still probably ask myself now whether it was the right decision to leave him at home. I mean, from an Ireland perspective, definitely was, because it's certainly like you can see him sitting at home on his couch, and I took that personal, in the style of Michael Jordan. It's like his inner Michael Jordan was unleashed by Warren Gatland not picking him.
Does that team have more Irish than everyone else put together?
I mean, you could do the maths for me there, Johnny, if you wanted. But yeah, Josh van der Fleer, obviously. I still don't know a huge amount about Caelan Doris, as he had a number of injuries leading up to the Lions tour in 2021. Scored a fantastic try against the All Blacks in November last year, and I know that the Leinster and Ireland coaching teams rate him very highly. I don't think Vinipola has been fit enough over the last 2 years, but looks to have made improvements. Jack Conan's unlucky not to make the 23. Dan Sheehan, Andrew Porter, all on the bench. Talibe Falatau is on the bench. Marcus Smith is on the bench. Jack Nowell's on the bench. So what does he say about James Ryan and not taking him?
Didn't obviously get your take on how big the series win was in the context of Irish sport. I'm open to persuasion on this.
I thought James and Tig worked incredibly well together as a combination. That's why I put Maro Itoje on the bench. Ireland were able to put the All Black line out under serious pressure. And something. Then the page is missing there. But so he didn't even put he didn't put him in his squad the last time. So a number of players who didn't make the squad. Warren is now like sorry that he let the Lions down by not picking these guys the last time when he should have.
So how big was the win on Saturday in Irish Sporting?
It was pretty big. Did you enjoy it?
I didn't see it actually. No, I was out.
Then obviously it's not that big for you, but it's big for other people.
I get it. I do wonder how
Michael McCarthy
New Zealand are how bad they are at the moment.
Michael McCarthy had a tier scale. Were you crying watching it? And if you cry watching it, then it matters to you more. He said he was bawling crying watching Kelly Harrington.
You could have a hangover and just be mentally fragile.
Well, I'd say that happens a lot.
Yeah,
with a lot of sports things.
Have you been to
what sports events have you cried at?
Galway winning the hurling All Ireland.
Why?
Just because it was such a long wait. I'd never seen them win anything in hurling ever. So because they'd last won it in the late 80s and I didn't remember that. Possibly cried in 98. Possibly, yeah. Will I cry on Sunday?
I'm saying yes now. If you win, I'm because you've thought about this now, you'll be like, oh, I should cry.
The older you get,
did you cry for Katie Taylor?
No, I didn't. I am. I'm not. No, I didn't. Katie Taylor won the Irish Sports Star of the Year award ahead of Sam Bennett, which was an absolute joke.
Katie Taylor, when she won the Olympics in 2012 in London, having had her entire life lead up to this entire moment, did you cry then? Not last year when she won the professional stuff.
I don't think I've ever seen Katie Taylor box.
In the Olympics?
No,
in London?
No, I'm not into boxing. Not into women's boxing, not really into boxing in general, so no. There's just some sports I just don't like. Is that a bad thing?
Like that was, we had been waiting for a long time. The whole rules of sport had changed because she was so good.
Yeah.
And the pressure that she was under to win in London was intense. No Irish person has ever had the amount of pressure and expectation that she has had. That in that like, was it 4 2-minute rounds, and then for it to be very close to being taken away at the last minute, the referee was, or the scoring was like, oof, did she? Definitely.
She's a national icon, but to win the sports person of the year over somebody winning the green jersey in the Tour de France is laughable. Like, what did she have, 2 fights?
Danny Mack says Johnny will be crying Sunday. Hey, I'm not sure that's
in sort of
pain. Well, if they lose, you won't cry though.
No, because it's a bit like the hurling this year. It's kind of bonus territory. If they, it's not like people were expecting Galway to be where they are necessarily. And if they give them a good game, I'll be happy enough. The older you get as well, you do realise that as long as you can live to fight another day, sport is sport.
Michael White says Shane Walsh needs to front up, letting defenders dictate his game. Armagh bullied him, the same with Derry.
Interesting.
His movement needs to be better so he doesn't get bogged down. We're going to put this to Andy McEntee, who's going to join us in a few minutes' time. I don't think that's true. I think he needs the protection from the referee, where he's like being MMA'd to the ground and having his head banged off the ground by opponents.
Yeah. And
his shoulder banged off the ground repeatedly off the ball, which is completely illegal. Like, it's a man's game, you need to be able to put up with the bullying. It's like, no,
you don't, and I hate that crap. I think Kerry and Galway, I mean, it's cliched, but I think it'll be a pretty open game. I don't really think
No.
I think it will.
No. Kerry have got
they have a nasty streak, but like at the same time,
Kerry are the most cynical of all the teams.
Just don't like Jack O'Connor.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's absolutely nothing to do with that. If you listen to Michael Meehan on the football pod, he said all those years he was playing against the teams from the north, the ones where he would get the most doing over was from the Kerry defenders. They were the toughest ones to mark. And James O'Donoghue says the same in training, that he would be up against those lads and they would be giving it to him in a way that prepared him well for whatever he would face from Tyrone and Armagh later. But it was never the same.
Well, you've marked the referee's card now anyway.
Well, the referee, of course, a Tyrone man, Paddy Talley, a Tyrone man from the same club. not that anybody's...
poor Joyce has played that down.
Yeah, well, you would, wouldn't you? Or else you talk it up in advance.
On the Shane Walsh thing, he does attract so much attention that it's extremely difficult for him at times, but it does help the rest of the Galway forwards. There's Jack. Not Jack, actually. Oh, there it is, Jack.
Yeah, Paddy Talley. What does Paddy Talley bring to the Kerry party is what the Examiner are asking today. It's interesting because obviously, it's an admission from Kerry that they needed something else. So Declan Bogue is a piece there. I haven't got a chance to read this yet, but I'm definitely going to read it because I love Declan Bogue stuff. And
the Examiner's sports pull-out on a Wednesday is traditionally brilliant, and I'm sure this is going to be proper build-up to the game. And it's great to see that there's some good stuff in the papers today about Keane O'Neill, Jack, and so on and so forth. Lots of good stuff to build up to the game. It's going to be a classic.
It's whetting your appetite.
Yeah, and it's just strange being when Galway won in 2001, like we sort of, we were getting used to All Ireland finals at that stage, and Galway were so good in that second half, and
still
Mr.
so young.
McEntee can talk about it like from the Meath perspective. It's just strange the way that football works, that they went on this famine, and it'll be interesting to see because the Galway's swung more towards being a hurling county in the last few years because of the success, but traditionally it is a football county.
More than a hurling county.
It's what?
More than a hurling county.
Yeah, like hurling would be more of a pocket of South Galway, whereas football would be more sort of spread across. Like, I think that's fair enough. But it is still absolutely mad that Connacht has essentially 2 All-Irelands since the mid-60s. Like, I find that very, very hard to get my head around, considering they were in the last 4 nearly.
You can blame Mayo for the flakiness. That's the big reveal. You're setting this joke up.
Lee Keegan might finally really say, like, maybe the McEntees would have issues if they were playing Dublin or Louth, or but in Connacht you should support your own because we're the downtrodden men of the West. Like, so I presume Lee Keegan is going to say everyone is up for Galway.
I don't think so. You can ask him the same question you asked him 2 weeks ago.
And he said I'm looking forward to the game. I'm intrigued by the game. So
Andy McEntee is with us this morning. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are we doing?
Mayo people should be up for Galway, Andy, on Sunday. Do you know, Connacht people, like, supporting their own.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Hey, no should or shouldn't, really. It's how you feel on the day, isn't it?
This is it.
Yeah.
This is it. I do feel when Mayo win All Ireland's, Galway people, there was a bit of a divide. A lot of them definitely wanted them to win. A lot of them definitely did not want them to win. But it's different for Galway that we just rocked up after all these years.
I think they enjoy their misery as well. I mean, it's just been, they're like rubbing their hands in glee over it. But I don't think anybody, if Mayo ever won, I don't think anybody would begrudge them.
No.
That's
so much
that is the point of a rivalry, though.
For sure. Yeah.
Before we talk to you about your new gig, what do you think is going to happen on Sunday?
I think Galway have a real chance. I genuinely do. I think both sets of forwards probably have an advantage, and maybe it's a bit of a cliche. I think midfield is going to be very important. Whoever wins that middle sector gets the right supply into the forwards. I mean, you'd imagine, you know, Clifford one end, Comer the other end. There's a couple of potential, I think, mismatches. So
mismatches.
Yeah, I just think. I mean, I think there's a lot of pace in both sets of forwards, and you know, if you can get good quality ball in, I think either set can really cause trouble.
There's a lot being made of Paddy Talley and the difference in Kerry's approach this year from previous years, and what he's brought to the party. And obviously because he's from the north and that's where the strong defensive systems originated, we're assuming that it's been a plug and play for him. Has it been plug and play? What have you noticed about Kerry's defence under the Talley regime?
I don't know. I mean, I think there is a little bit of a myth out there that, you know, if it's so long as you have a northern coach, that defensively, you know, there's loads of good defensive coaches and teams that have come up with good defensive structures. I mean, Dublin have had, you know, arguably the best defence around over the last 10 years. So it's not their sole property, if you like. I think Kerry are probably, you know, hard to know how much they've learned, how much they've improved really until the squeeze is really on. I mean, you could argue, I think most people would argue, if Con Callahan was playing the last day, not so sure they'd have got it over the line.
Yeah.
Maybe if Scully recycles the ball, like, you're talking fine margins here.
Yeah, look, in all those close games, you really are talking fine margins, and you know, it was getting to a stage where Kerry were struggling. You know,
is that a psychological thing because they haven't got over the line, that's not in the team yet? Whereas if they get over the line, then they'll know what to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's always a possibility. You know, once you know it's no longer a mystery. Once you win one of those big games, and you know, beating Dublin was, you know, I mean, from a Kerry perspective, you'd like to think that that's got the monkey off the back, and they can go on and really perform to the, you know, the ability that everybody seems to think they have. But truth of the matter is, over the last number of years, Kerry haven't won too many close contests. And the way the game fell the last day, I mean, it was, you know, an incredible strike by Sean O'Shea, but it couldn't have been any better, really. I mean, it was, you know, okay, ball goes wide, we're still in the game here.
Yeah.
Ball goes over, Dublin don't have a chance to respond. So I still think that question mark hangs over, and if it came down to a real tight battle.
So if you're setting up a team from Galway's perspective this weekend, like in that first half against Derry, Galway were ultra defensive, and they sat back and they watched, and they've got credit for that in some ways, in that it was like they were super patient. They were like, let's see exactly what you have. You're not going to score the goals early that you scored against everybody else to win games, and let's see if you're actually able to win the match after that. Was that strategic, or was that them not playing very well themselves in the first half? Did it look like they were just doing what their plan was? What did you think of that?
Yeah, I was at that game. It looked strategic to me. It looked there was a very definite lack of pace. I mean, it started, I mean, the bit that surprised me a little bit even was just from their kick-out strategy. No hurry to get the ball on the tee, and I thought they had an advantage. You know, they had a height advantage out around midfield, half forward line. There was a lot of opportunities to go long quick, which they seemed to resist that temptation.
Why do you think they're doing that? Is that like we're gonna this is this group's first All-Ireland semi-final, the prize is huge, calm down everybody? Is that what that is?
Yeah, and you know, you don't want to get caught against a team like Derry. You don't want to get caught, you know, trying to chase the game, because you know that's a perfect setup for Derry. So there's a little bit of cat and mouse at the start. I was a bit disappointed in that. I felt a bit like Sunday. I felt Galway's forwards would have the edge if they really attacked them. Derry, you know, put in a great performance, excuse me, against Clare, but there were still goal chances to be got against them. We played them in the league earlier on in the year. We got numerous goal chances. So I was a little bit surprised that Galway's hesitancy or reluctance to really go at them in the first half. I think when they did pick it up and went at them in the second half,
it was fairly obvious they were the superior team.
Yes, yeah, I thought that, yeah.
Is there a possibility there is cagey in the first half just because it's an All-Ireland final and they want to see what Kerry can do, or is it actually like, is it better to go out and try and punch Kerry in the mouth in the first 15 minutes?
Well, I think the difference between Kerry and Derry, for example, is that Kerry have a lot more guys that can hurt you. I mean, you know, the vast majority of Derry's scores came from one source throughout the year. So I could see where they were going to be a little bit more cagey at the start against Kerry. You know, they have numerous sources that can hurt you.
It could be if the pattern of play is similar as it was to the semi-final. It could be 8-4 at half-time for Kerry, and Galway might not be able to get that back though. So there's a danger in sitting.
Oh, I think if it was 8-4, 8-5, yeah, I think they could get that back.
Okay, they'd be happy enough.
I think so. I mean
Dublin got it back, like.
Yeah, but without doing anything special, really.
Dublin have better forwards than Galway at the moment.
Dublin have won many All-Irelands and know what the experience is like. I think that's the bit that we don't know how Galway will respond.
Interesting. Like, so Galway, to me, what do you think of that? And Galway don't have the shackles of failure anymore because they don't really know what it's like. They have the experiences this year coming through 3 or 4 tight games and winning. So I don't see them as mentally negative at all or weak.
Yeah, and I think just from a mental, approach to the game, coming into the game, I think there's still an awful lot expected of Kerry. And I think the vast majority of people say, yeah, Kerry, you're after beating Dublin, you're in a position here. Galway are in a nice position here. I'd like to think that they could and really have a go at them when it came to if you're there with 10 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, you're thereabouts, you really have a cut.
The last 3 teams, as Owen Sheehan keeps pointing out this week, the last 3 teams to beat Dublin in the Championship have failed to go on and win the All-Ireland. Like, there's a kind of weird letdown.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's circumstantial. I'm sure it's not like, because they celebrate too much or anything, but...
I think our only win since, I could be wrong on this, our first win in Croke Park since 2001 in the Championship was against Kerry. So they're one of literally the only teams, and we had that amazing Michael Meehan game in the rain. Galway Kerry games at Croke Park have traditionally been close. I don't think they've any fear though. I think coming through the Armagh game has really stood at them mentally, because that was just ridiculous. To be able to concede 7 points in injury time and to still have the composure to score all their penalties, they're in a good place.
What do you do about Clifford?
Oh, look at, you restrict the quality of ball going into him, and even the difference first half, second half against Dublin, the positions that Clifford was getting the ball in were totally different than he was getting them in the first time. So you gotta help. You gotta give your full back line a chance. You say, okay, let's make this a 50-50 ball, or at best, look, let's make sure he's getting it in areas of the field that he can't really hurt you. And you're going to, if it's Sean Kelly or whoever it is, he's going to need help. He's going to need help. But he's such a big, versatile man. Sticking too close to him is dangerous because he's just going to roll you. You need the confidence to play him from in front and be really, really positive. And as soon as it looks like a chance of a high ball or something going in over the top, his buddies have got to be there to help him out.
There'll be a situation I wonder, like where you're trying to hold on to the ball as much as possible to keep the ball away from the opposition in a way, like which carried a lot in the second half. Will Galway just try to do that? In the Derry game was interesting that Derry recycle, such that Galway only scored a point in the first half an hour. So did Galway try to build a possession game and dictate on their terms and keep the ball away from Kerry and keep the ball away from Clifford?
Yeah, but you still got to win the game. Like, are you going to go out and lose a really, a really low scoring game? You still, at some stage, they're going to have to. The game will go through various periods of play and various styles at different times. You just got at times you got to slow it down. You got to hold on to the ball, but when the opportunity arises, you got to go.
And they're not built to keep the ball. They haven't. When they tried to
Probably
keep the
not
ball against
really,
Armagh, Shane Walsh kicked it across the field. Like
that was the sliding doors moment of the campaign. I mean, to come through that, maybe so. I think the Clifford thing is maybe on the whole thing. Galway's hopes hinge really how he plays.
Yeah, but again, how he plays is really going to depend on the amount and the quality of ball that he gets. And that's where I think Conroy and McDade have I think they have an edge. I'm not convinced that Kerry have the answer at midfield. David Moran, for all his his great year of service and all his qualities,
he's immobile now. Like,
well, I'm surprised if it come back to him. To be perfectly honest, I mean, you could argue he came close to losing the game from there against Dublin again.
The coughed up possession. Yeah,
he coughed up a very simple ball. Last year's semi-final, he arguably got bullied by a pretty young, inexperienced Tyrone midfielder, and then you go back to 2 years ago against Dublin. So I'm surprised at and that sounds like I'm being really harsh on him. He's been a hell of a servant, but time moves on, and Croke Park, if you don't have the legs, Croke Park is not the place for you.
100%,
is there a possibility he gets dropped and they just go with O'Connor and Barry?
That wouldn't hugely surprise me.
And then you have him in reserve to come on and pick passes out in the second half.
And you have, in O'Connor and Barry, you've got legs. I mean, Galway have legs.
Yeah, well,
but Conroy, in fairness, Conroy would be relatively immobile for a midfielder. He's getting on a bit, and defensively he's not great. It's a massive boost, I think, for Galway that if Bourne starts, that negates that, because Galway don't have that is definitely a worry for Conroy's a brilliant footballer, but defensively he's not. Obviously, that's not his strong point.
Yeah. Well, I think he's probably having a better year this year than he's had in a long time.
Oh yeah.
And I think I would have thought his defensive qualities have improved.
And if he kicks a couple of those mad points,
and he's passing, like
the crowd's going to go mad.
Yeah.
Andy, last time you were in, you were just finishing up. You just finished up with Meath, and were like not certain about ever getting back involved.
In fact, if I remember correctly, I think I probably was certain that I wouldn't be getting back involved. But anyway, yeah, I think I know where this is going.
So what
I'm
happened?
sure this surprises a lot of people, but it probably surprises me more than anyone else.
Yeah, look, I got approached, Donald Murphy, he's the treasurer up in Antrim. He asked me would I have a chat with him, and I agreed to have a chat, and then one thing led to another, and I liked what I heard. I liked what they're trying to do up in Antrim.
Will you tell us about that? Because that's the bit, right? Like we've covered the Casement story over the years here, and we've seen the footage, and finally something's happening. And we would have covered the Antrim team more over the last couple of years, just because we had a relationship pre-existing with their manager, and like it was always really interesting to hear him talk about the quality of footballer and what they were trying to do, and they achieved a lot over the last couple of years. So what was it that you heard that you thought, I'm interested in this now?
Well, I suppose I look at the bare facts of it. I mean, the population of Antrim, I think, is the second biggest population in the country now. Obviously, not everyone up there would be massive GA fans, but even if you're half it, still a decent, over 300,000. It's still a very decent population. Organisation-wise, they seem very organised. They seem well funded as regards being able to look after the team. The facilities that they have are, second to none. The geography of the county itself would mean that there's nobody any more than, say, 35 minutes away from a training centre. In a lot of ways, it's like Dublin. It's, structurally. You have the body, the club scene up there is still very, very strong, very, very competitive. And I suppose the challenge is to get them playing to, the limits of what they're capable of. Also, I think that, Enda and Stevie, the work they've done in the last couple of years, have done a fair bit of heavy lifting, and they look like the culture, the attitude towards what they're capable of seems to be changing. The Casement Park situation, that's exciting too for anybody, you know, in Gaelic games at all. I mean, to have history like that and to, you know, a project like that is exciting. Should get an awful lot of people on board. They have the Saffron business community up there, getting a lot of people behind the Gaelic games up there, and they are very passionate. You know, the half that do support GA up there are very, very passionate about their games. So, all in all, I got persuaded. Maybe I was easily persuaded. I don't know, but it was probably never going to be another team from Leinster. Wasn't going to be a team in Division 2. So I guess it ticked a good few boxes.
Were you surprised at yourself how you decided, after all of that, I'm going back in? Did one half of Andy McEntee talk to the other half and say, what are you doing here? Like, cop on to yourself.
No, sure, you know, the two halves or the three halves or whatever, they're always talking to each other there. Sometimes they just don't make sense. I mean, you gotta go. You know, you write down the pros and the cons, and you talk to a lot of the important stakeholders. You know, my wife Catherine being one of those. You know, after 2 or 3 weeks, she was probably going, "Oh my God, I wish he'd go out and train somebody or go somewhere."
I bought you new golf clubs.
I did that, yeah. That only goes for... She gets fed up with me playing golf too. Look at, I mean,
Do you feel like you've unfinished business? Is that like, as an inter-county manager, that's like your time was horribly interrupted with COVID, and then the situation at Meath in the last year was obviously difficult with the county board situation. Then actually a clear run at it with the full support of everybody from the get-go, taking on board all the lessons you've learned when it's normal times, and you can have training sessions, you can go meet people for coffee. Do you feel like you didn't fully scratch the itch of what it means to be an inter-county manager?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I didn't face any more difficult times than anybody else. So I mean, you know, that's the way it was. I don't feel hard done by you know, the last couple of years. I've had 6 great years with the lads. I know most of them from a very young age. So I mean, that was definitely something I always wanted to do. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think I like doing what I do.
Jack O'Connor's talking about it basically being a semi-professional gig, and the amount of organisational and backroom team and management. Like for him, it doesn't sound like it's a burden, obviously, especially not now that he's not doing the travelling. You will be doing a bit of travelling, but it's not too bad to Belfast.
No, I keep telling Catherine it's an hour and a half, but it's possibly a little bit more. But anyway, look, I mean, it's not a hard drive. You know, you're on the motorway pretty much the whole way up to Jordanstown. I'm really excited about the facilities up there and the backup team that they have around them. I mean, they have a full-time strength and conditioning guy up there, Brendan Murphy. Fantastic experience of all the availability of the sports science unit in Jordanstown. So, you know, that bit in itself, I just love to see where you can get to with a bunch of fellas who are totally committed.
There was the potential, really, that.
Yeah, I think that's the truth. Yeah.
What is the potential?
The potential is the same as it is for any talented group of fellas. The potential is endless. It just depends on how much you want to put into it, and how much it means to you, and what you're prepared to sacrifice. It's like any other team. It's, as we all know, it's a very competitive place out there, but up in Ulster in particular. So
it's I suppose with the Tailteann Cup, the narrative has changed for a county like Antrim a bit now, where you see, you know, there are those kind of layers of what you want to achieve beyond the league.
Yeah, well, there's 3 avenues of success, really. I mean, there's the championship itself, there's the league, and now there's a Tailteann Cup. So there's 3 ways that you could have a decent year, or a decent couple of years. So that in itself has got to be, an incentive to guys who are wondering, where can this get to?
Can you become a bit of a voice for Casement as well in terms of your role? Because I think in fairness, Off the Ball have covered it, but there's probably a bit of a partitionist divide in terms of the South not realising how much of a calamity this has been. Really, like I think I was at one of the last games there when they beat Galway by a point in 2011, maybe 2012, one of the last games, and it's just sad. Like you could tell how passionate they were, as you say, and it was just really sad, the disrepair.
Yeah, and I think if you could get the team on a bit of a roll and you get a bit of success, I mean, I think the support levels from all sectors of the community would and could get behind it. So I mean, I think that in that itself could be a massive unifying, absolutely everything. There's a lot of possibilities here.
One last question for you: have you got a backroom team sorted yet, or is that something that will happen over?
No, we're just finalising a few bits and pieces.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
A defensive coach from the north, perhaps. They're very, very en vogue.
Sure, that's the only place you can get a defensive coach, isn't it?
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Who's going to win on Sunday? You're close to saying Galway.
I think there's a couple of possibilities. I think if Kerry come out and really, hit the ground running, there could be a bit in it. If it goes down the wire, I'm going for Galway in a close one.
Right, well, it'll be a cracker if that's the case. Andy, we wish you the very best of luck in Antrim. Yeah. Thanks very much for joining us in
Sorry
studio
for being
today.
a bit late.
No, you're grand. The traffic's not great. We've got Lee Keegan standing by. We're going to get him in a second. Here's Vinnie Perth on last night's show talking about how League of Ireland clubs are selling their better players to clubs abroad too cheaply.
It is a difficult one, and we're losing a lot of talent for small money. Like Danny Mandrew gone for 30,000. Makes no sense to me. I don't know the ins and outs of the deal, but I had a similar situation where someone came in for a really important player, belonged to Dundalk. I rode with our ownership, similar size fee. Insisted he didn't play, he didn't leave. And he was instrumental in us beating the Talon side last year, which made maybe £450,000 for the club, and almost he scored 2 goals. So you work out who I'm talking about. Almost knocked out Vitesse Arnhem, and by holding on to that player, the investment in him and staying away from that money was well worth it. So it is judgment calls, and clubs have to be brave, particularly the clubs in Europe. If you're still in Europe, you can't let your players go for cheap.
I'm wondering out loud here, the exit clauses, the escape clauses we've seen in terms of like numbers, they're all they seem near in around the 5 figures. Promise on a share, from what I hear, is 5 figures. It's going to be add-ons. Danny Mandrew was 30 grand, which became pretty public. Like, it's a vicious cycle, because that kind of money, if a club comes in and offers the opportunity to the player, it behooves the player to listen to the opportunity that's available to them. But similarly, the club are getting stung for, like, if Rovers progress in Europe, like, the 30 grand is like doesn't compare to the money they could get if they progress in Europe. So you want to hang on to the player, you also want to progress in Europe. But if you don't hang on to the player, you're not going to progress in Europe, so you're going to end up with a lesser sum of money.
Yeah, that's the lads talking last night. You can get that podcast on the OTB Football Show podcast as well. Now, I'm delighted to say Lee Keegan is with us. Lee, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Here, how things? How are you?
Good. Johnny Ward has been excitedly trying to build up the courage to ask you the question that he asked you already, but he just wants an answer this time. Go on.
Yeah, who are you up for on Sunday anyway, Lee?
It's not always the question I get asked first ever. Like, do I need to support somebody? Can I not watch it from a neutral perspective?
You can, yeah.
If they could both lose, I think there's many of us in that boat.
But you see, there will be the neutral perspective, but then, like, if there's a point in it or it's level and it's gone into injury time, whether you're neutral or not, you're not neutral, and something will come to the fore of your heart. What will that be?
Depends how many beers I've had on board before I say it. So if I've had a few, it could go anyway. Like, but I don't know. I'm not a big supporter any of going to games. I do like to watch them unless a Mayo team's involved. I'm not really a massive supporter of a team, but I like taking notes of what's going on around and players play well and matchups and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not necessarily. I'm going to be a politician. I'm not going to specifically select who I'm supporting because I'm not really supporting anyone.
You see, after the game Sunday, like TJ Reid and Lynch, and there's obviously huge respect among inter-county players in general. Like, would you know many of the Galway lads? Would you know many of the Kerry lads? Like, would you be texting anyone sort of after the game? Are you friendly with any of them?
I don't like to Comer well. I got to know over the last couple of years, just on social media and after games. Obviously, I suppose we are close rivals and neighbours. So I mean, you come across these boys quite regularly. And my brother, Keegan McDade, well, I know a couple of other guys like Hyder and works with a couple of them as well. So like even Keane O'Neill, like he was our selector, and I worked with Board Choice 12 on the international rules. Like I'd be throwing these guys a text, wish them all the best, because I suppose I got messed up these guys over the years when we played in finals with Mayo. So I think it's only nice that, we show a bit of respect back. In terms of Kerry lads, not so much. Probably they were probably a different generation to what I would have known the likes of David Moore and that when they came through. Probably the likes of Clifford, Sean O'Shea, got to know them, obviously played against them the last couple of years, but wouldn't know them on a real personal level. But again, I got to see them live in action, so I know how good they are in terms of what they're doing for Kerry. So just looking forward to seeing these guys kind of show their stuff on the biggest stage is what I'm looking forward to be honest. But yeah, like I mean, it was great to see the likes of, you're looking at probably the two greatest hurlers in the last few years, Keane Lynch and TJ Reid, and you can see that kind of respect between both. It's just a nice moment, touching moment to see that they respect each other much after a big game like that.
What does Keane bring to that Galway setup?
Well, I suppose if you look at his record, he's brought them to a final. He's done that with most teams, to be honest. Probably it's like Kildare, but he brought Kildare to a good level as well. So I think it's just his knowledge of the game, his setup, and I suppose because he's been around quite a while with different teams, and he's probably he knows a lot of the personnel he's come up against. He knows their traits and probably how to beat them. That's probably a huge plus for Galway. So he took on us, and he set up pretty well, and obviously Galway with the Paddy Tally factor as well will be huge next day as well. So I just think Keane brings this kind of very much air of confidence around the squad. And I remember when we came in 12 with Keane, it was very new to ourselves. He's not afraid, he's not shy, he'll stamp his authority and set out his stall straight away. So I think that's really suited Galway and their style. I don't think he's one to take a backward step. I say when he came in, he did set a stall out pretty early, and he doesn't care what way you set up or how. If it works and it wins, he's happy. It is a results-driven game. So I think Keane just brought that, probably even that bit of physical edge to Galway, and maybe that people have talked about over the last years that it was missing. People always thought that Galway probably been excellent footballers, really flair attackers, but they kind of have that bit of steel about them this year, and especially down the stretch. Maybe if you looked at their Armagh game and even the Derry game to a degree when things weren't going well, you probably would have thought maybe Galway were going to suffer a little bit, but they never panicked. They actually looked quite comfortable at times. Even in their Armagh game, although it was pandemonium, you still felt that Galway had that bit extra if they needed, and I think that's down to the Keane O'Neill factor.
Is it partly also a defensive structure? Because obviously when Joyce came in, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna kick our way to the All-Ireland," and then everything happened since, and they've actually gone significantly back in terms of the old era under Kevin Walsh, which was supposed to be repudiated by everything that Joyce was doing. And then O'Neill comes in and suddenly the defensive structure seems to appear. I don't know if that's like a coincidence or if he's actually essentially involved in that.
I think he'd be essentially involved in that. Keane's a big voice, he's a big personality. So I think that's a lot of that's around Keane's personality as well. So he knows. I think to be honest, what it does with Galway, it does suit Galway. I know we're talking about their attacking and they have that in their armoury, but I think for Galway, I think they look so much more comfortable in the way they're playing. And I look at the players like Kieran Malloy, Daly, and Liam Silk, these lads, they look so much more confident in the way they're playing the football. And then I think there is way more in Shane Welsh to come. I think potentially he could have a massive game Sunday. I think he was quite quiet the last two games, albeit his frees have been huge for Galway. And he's getting the best of the likes of Rob Finley, Kelly McDade. These boys probably who weren't seeing huge amount of game time over the last 3, 4, 5 years are now some of their mainstays in the team. And I think that's down to the fact that Pork and Keane have come to probably a good agreement of how Galway should play. And it's not like, we're talking about them set up defensively, but they're still putting up quite good tallies of scoring. So I actually seen something on social media last night that like their average scoring per game is something like 217. So like that's still a big score to be putting up. And I think Kerry had something like 117. So it's going to be a tight game in terms of that. So like, I mean, I know we're talking about goal up in defensive, but they're still racking up big tallies of scores. So I mean, their offensive side of things is quite good as well. So it's not like they're over reliant on defensive play. Albeit now, it'll be very interesting to see how they're going to set up from the start against Kerry on Sunday with Kerry's attack.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because listening to Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue talking about what's going to happen with Clifford, James O'Donoghue thinks as captain, Sean Kelly will be in the meeting saying, I'm going to take the responsibility on, I'm going to be the leader, because he's supposed to go up against Clifford. That's the way the teams will be named, and if he doesn't, it's some kind of a signal to Kerry that actually we've had to make changes and move off our spot. Is that the right thing to do? Is it like important to kind of go, yeah, it's fine, I can do this as captain, or does that matter? Should it actually just be whoever is the best marker goes on Clifford?
I would definitely agree it has to be the best marker. I don't think it can be a leadership thing that I'm going to say I'm going to mark Clifford. That necessarily is not going to be a good matchup. Albeit it's great that he can step up and say that, but I don't think it's going to be a set thing with one guy. It's going to take maybe a double team maybe at times. Like there will be probably a set guy marking Clifford. It could be Sean Kelly, it could be himself. I don't know. Still trying to figure that one out. But they're going to be a lot of support, or especially from the half back line in terms of Kieran Malloy and Daly dropping back into that space to help out. So it's not going to be just a 1v1 matchup where we're all going to say who's going to come out on top, because if it is, then Clifford's going to get on top. That's just the reality. Like he can mark Clifford as well as he can, but the reality is he's probably going to still tip you for 3, 4, 5 points, and that's probably a good day for defenders. So I think it's not just going to be a 1v1. I think it is going to be a lot of case where a lot of the goal, I suppose, support guys who are dropping back are going to help out if it's going to be Sean Kelly or himself or Jack Glenn. So I don't think it's going to be a case where we're just going to see a 1v1 matchup for the full game.
Will they look at the Dublin game and maybe particularly the second half and learn from that?
Definitely. The thing I'd worry probably from that point of view, it's probably a really positive for a goal, is that if Galway were still in the game 10 minutes in the second half, Kerry were blowing quite hard in that game against Dublin. So I think that's a huge source of positivity for Galway. And I don't think Galway are going to lack fitness or belief from that point of view. So I think if they're within touch of distance of the game, and listen, and that could mean Clifford or Sean O'Shea or Quaddy, these guys have already clipped 2 or 3 points, but it doesn't matter if they're still within a score or 4 or 5 points going into the third quarter or late into the fourth quarter. I think they have a massive chance, because Kerry, they exhausted a huge amount of energy up to that third quarter against Dublin. And it's funny, I read somewhere like Sean O'Shea had no pressure taking that kick. I think he had every bit of pressure taking that kick, because I thought if he missed that and
they lose in extra time, yeah.
They lose in extra time.
Were you surprised by that, Lee? Because they did look, I don't think it was a mental thing, they looked physically shot at the end.
I think they just put so much into the first 40-45 minutes, to be honest. I think they went so hard for them 45 minutes, and they just seemed to stop. It was like they're getting lined up and they're falling down. Like, I never seen so many bodies in the last 5-10 minutes. So again, I don't have a shock. I take in the factor that the weather was warm, full house, all that kind of stuff. But like, to be honest, the longer the game went on, the more I seen Dublin win that game. So I think that is a concern for Jack these 2 weeks. Now listen, you're not going to get any fitter or stronger or faster in these 2 weeks. I mean, the biggest thing for Kerry after a game of that magnitude, and I suppose, as Jack said, it was an emotional roller coaster, is that it's just trying to get them grinding out for the last 2 weeks, and particularly these few days now, just getting the group together and make sure they're nice and relaxed going into the weekend, because I don't think there's much more you can do, but I do think it's a huge source of confidence for Galway if they have them in the game in Belfast, that they'll see a huge opportunity to take them down.
The other thing that has come up a lot is, will there be high ball lorried in on top of the Galway goalkeeper and the Galway full back line, given that Armagh got a lot of joy out of that in the last 8-10 minutes of that match. Derry didn't try it at all for whatever reason. We have seen them have issues with it even in the Connacht Championship as well. I assume they will do that, because at various stages in that first half against Dublin, Sean O'Shea was playing left corner forward, and he was certainly in that left corner forward position, and they were dragging defenders with him. At one stage, James McCarthy was back marking him. I was like, that's not really where Dublin want James McCarthy. And you had Clifford and Sean O'Shea in there. It's like all Kerry have to do at that stage, let's just see what the nerves are like in that Galway full back line. Would you try that early on if you're Kerry?
I would, yes. And just if you're looking at the Derry game, for instance, I was saying, I suppose Galway looked quite nervy in the first 10-15 minutes against Derry, and it's totally normal. I suppose it's a big game. So I'd be, at any chance, I'd be looking to get ball into Clifford, Sean O'Shea, if it's Paul Keane or Killian Spland that are in there as well. I'd be looking to get them early and just see where Galway we're at straight away. I suppose the good thing for Kerry, they've been here before, they've been in big finals, so I think they'll be used to that kind of the atmosphere and the All-Ireland final prep. So if I were David Moran or Ger O'Connor or even Jack Barry next to, I'd be getting ball in as quick as possible, just to see where Galway are at or how they're feeling. And if you get a couple of scores off it, then it could be a tough first half for Galway. But that's the big question, I suppose. Who's going to start midfield for Kerry? They're going to look at Dave Moran, or is it going to be Jack Barry or Ger O'Connor? So, but those boys need to get ball in ASAP. And I think Paulie Clifford's a smart enough player where he'll recognise that too. And he's a big game player for Kerry. So, and he's one of the guys that you always look at him. He has the head up, looking inside to see can he get ball in straight away. So it's definitely going to be a big factor for Kerry in the first few minutes. See how much ball they can get into them two boys.
So let's expect that to happen. Can Galway? Is it possible that they have fixed that in the intervening period, that obviously they know this is coming and so therefore you prepare for it, and like it's a confidence thing, I suspect, as much as anything? It's not like technique. They know how to defend high balls. They just, for whatever reason, the confidence went for that particular 10-15 minutes.
I'll say with Dublin though, at any time, like I suppose I remember Dave Moore putting in the ball that Clifford caught in the first half. It was just a lovely diagonal ball, 50-50 contest between Fitzsimons and Clifford, and Clifford came out off it. So I mean, that there's a huge scope there for Kerry. And I remember when we played Kerry back in 14, David Moore and Donny factor, it was just get the ball into that diagonal on the D. Even if he doesn't catch clean, you remember James O'Donoghue coming off on a loop, and that could be a Sean O'Shea now. Like you like Sean O'Shea and Clifford, they're big lads. They're not small lads. They're tall men. Like so, I mean, it's definitely a tactic I'd be using early on in the game, especially if Galway are a bit nervy going into that game. So I mean, I'd be testing that out, and even the Conor Gleeson factor as well. I mean, Kerry get a couple of early scores. I suspect that Kerry are going to really attack Gleeson's kickouts next day as well. So there's going to be a massive squeeze. And I remember we played Kerry as well. They do this kind of, it's like a 4-4, nearly 2. They set up 4 inside, 4 half forward, and 2 in the middle. So if you see that early on, you can see there's going to be a massive squeeze in Conor Gleeson. And if they get that pressure on early and they win that battle, it could be a tough couple of opening minutes for Galway. But again, I do think with the Galway factor, I don't think they panic. That's the one thing I knows of Galway this year particularly, and that's down to Port Joyce and Keane. I suppose they're pretty comfortable going behind. They went 3-0 behind Derry last day, albeit they're playing quite poor. They actually never looked like they were pressing the panic button. So I do suspect that Galway will get into the game, but I mean that's going to be a huge factor for Kerry. If they can get on top early and see how much they can get ahead, we'll see how Galway react in the same manner.
Would you be more worried from a Galway's perspective about the kickouts then? Because that's going to be so important. Like whoever has most of the ball probably wins.
I think it's going to be a big talking point in the Galway camp this week. I suppose Derry didn't really push them that. It was a Derry game plan. I mean, we knew, I suppose they're set up at that stage. And if Galway got ahead of them, how Derry going to react? And unfortunately, didn't have a game plan for that. So I don't think it's going to be the same case. I do think Kerry are going to really attack Gleeson's kick at the next day. And actually, funny enough, I think Kerry could do the same on Shane Ryan. They'd see that as maybe a source of income from themselves as well, that they put a bit of pressure on Shane Ryan from time to time, so he reacts in the big day as well. But I do think Kerry are going to sniff blood there. I think it's one of their key traits now. I've seen the last couple of years that it's a high press, that 4-4-2 type press.
Galway go long then, Lee, or?
I think go long, but I think Galway are good at midfield. They have Paul Conroy who can fetch fantastic ball, but the key is just if David Moran is on Paul Conroy, we know how good David Moran's in there as well. So that's a big 50-50 battle as well. So but then we're not having to watch it to go long if there's something short. That's like I suppose you go a risk point of view and take on something short. It doesn't go well. We know the 14 final. As someone said, Durkin had nearly a full set of year of no mistakes on kickouts, and the one kickout that went astray was a goal. So I mean, safety first sometimes has to take over everything. You just have to default and go along and let the boys fight out for 50-50 ball. And sometimes it's the best thing to do. Get the ball as far away from your goal as possible, especially if the likes of Clifford on top early. Just get away from the danger zone as quick as possible.
If you're trying to make the case for a Galway win, right? So obviously we've talked about the difficulties that they have in defence, but what will they be trying to inflict on Kerry, and when do they do it? Because we were just a bit of a debate earlier with Andy McEntee, and he expects the first half to be super cagey. But part of me thinks if Galway are going to win this, actually a fast start is incredibly important to them in a way that it wasn't against Derry.
Yeah. Well, I think if Galway start like they did against Derry, then it could be a tough half. I mean, I suppose Derry have nowhere near the same quality as Kerry, obviously, but you just think of Kerry's attack and the way they're playing at the moment in terms of that upper half. I think Kerry could reign if Gola start the way. And I don't expect Gola to be that cage. I hope they come out, set their stall early, and see how Kerry react. I don't think Gola are going to set up in a way that they're going to let Kerry attack them. I just don't think that's going to work for Gola. I think there is going to have to be some degree of risk in this game. I just don't think they can play safe not to win. It is a final at the end of the day. I mean, you can hold on for so long, but I just think with Kerry, even Kerry's bench, there's a lot of quality in their attacking zone. So I'd like to see like the Shane Walsh or Homer or Killian McDade just break the line early, get a couple of scores. Particularly Shane Walsh, I want to see him take on his man a bit more. Albeit it's going to be very difficult. I know. I sense the likes of Thomas Sullivan's going to be stuck to him, and that could be a good matchup. But there is so much more in Shane Welch Army that I think we need to see it on Sunday. Particularly, I know McCluskey did a fine man marking role on the last day, and Comer obviously had a good day, but they're going to need the likes of their leaders like that to step up the next day. So I do think Portjoy is going to have a good game plan in terms of he's going to attack Kerry straight away. I just don't think they can sit back and let Kerry dictate terms and conditions early on, because I think Kerry are just too good. So just to give Gola any chance of winning. I generally honestly give Gola a great chance of winning. I said if they're down the stretch and there's a score or two in it, they'll see a huge opportunity. But I suppose, as you said, it's the start, it's the first half. How close can they beat Kerry, or can they even get ahead of Kerry to give them that chance?
Seems to be, just looking at the weather forecast, seems to be a reasonable prospect of rain as well, as some contrast to the hurling. Like what do you do in terms of coaching there if it is greasy ball? Remember that epic Galway Kerry from, what year was Michael Meehan? 2014? 08, wasn't it? 08, was it that long? God, my years are all over the shop. We had him on last week, and one of the great performances in defeat, I suppose, in Croke Park. But
actually, Kerry and Galway played in the Super 8s on a bad day as well, and Galway came out on top on that day as well. And a lot of the same guys are playing from, I know, albeit like to play for Shawnee, these lads are a bit younger, but Galway came out on top that day and they played really well. So that could be a huge factor in that. And that was a rain soaked Croke Park that day as well. So I mean, there is that source of confidence if the weather isn't so good.
Yeah. Do you just
your game plan does have to alter a little bit. Like I mean, not hugely, but obviously you're taking conditions as a defender. Do you play that bit safer? Do you play instead of playing maybe side to side, or maybe some guys like to play in front? That you have to think as a defender, do I play maybe that yard behind? I don't get turned or spun, or I might slip. You know, even you think Brendan Rodgers last day on Cobra, he slipped, and it was a lovely day. You know, so you maybe go a bit more default safety first as a defender, and you play that bit safer. So therefore, and that's just taking in conditions, and we know Croke Park on a really wet day, it's like an ice rink at times. So that does play a big factor in terms of defenders and how to defend, and I think that'll play into some of the guys next day.
From your perspective, Lee, like, because like Mayo went to Croke Park so many times, won games there, lost games there. Like, what's Galway's mentality in that these players have very, very little experience of Croke Park, and their experience of it this year are effectively 2 victories that were, you know, in the balance, you could say, certainly at times in the game, and they came through it. Whereas, like, the Mayo perspective was, was there like a kind of a mental weight in terms of the expectation that Mayo could win All Ireland? Is it different for Galway, if that makes sense?
To a degree, I don't necessarily agree with it. Like, I mean, our expectation was always to win. I mean, and if you don't have that expectation, then I wouldn't see the point of playing. You don't quite play to be second best. Unfortunately, we were on the end of both sides long enough, and we weren't on the right side in finals. So, but our expectation was always going to win, be it Croke Park or anywhere. So, but I think the beauty for Galway coming into the final is they haven't been in the final in 20 years. So there's none of that baggage with this current group. And as you said, they've come through 2 Ulster teams, and I think anytime you get over Ulster teams, you're doing a good job. And I mean, particularly Armagh were they were favourites going to that game. So for Galway to come out on the right side of that in Croke Park is a big testament to Port Joyce and how he's got his guys playing for him. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a huge factor for Galway. My biggest factor for Galway is the nerves, and even watching the studio for the semi-final, it looked very nervy in the legs in the first 10-15 minutes. And again, it's very understandable. But when you're coming up against a team like Kerry who have that experience, you can't wait around for 10-15 minutes because the game passed by straight away. So that's my biggest factor. I don't think the factor of Croke Park and all that kind of stuff. I think Port Joyce is smart enough and he knows the game well enough, and he's been there and he's done it. I think that'll be all reviewed, and psychology, that'll be all out of the way early. I just think it's get your legs right for the first time. And it's easier said than done. It's a massive day. We all understand that, but you can't wait around for Kerry for 10 or 15 minutes, so the game's going to get away from that.
In a word, who's going to win?
I'm back in Kerry by 3 or 4, but I do have this inkling of Goaler again. I keep saying if they're down the stretch and the game's in the balance, I have this inkling that Goaler could pick them. But at the moment, I'm just back in Kerry just slightly based on forward power and the Jack Connor factor in these bits and pieces. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Enjoy the game, Lee. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Always great to have Lee Keegan on talking to us about the ins and outs of the game. Interesting stuff.
I think the key word there he mentioned, without suggesting that Mayo didn't believe, was baggage, and Galway don't have any baggage going into this final.
You keep talking yourself into this. Every part of you is like, it's like you've read The Secret and you're trying to manifest this All-Ireland victory.
Galway football's been in a strange place since. I mean, we spoke about, like, it's hard to describe what 1998 was like in Galway. That was just such an amazing time. And we had these marquee, beautiful footballers, including Pádraig Joyce, and we had a county that was like so behind them, and it was amazing. 2001, 2001 was a lot more chilled out from what I remember, because we were sort of expecting success, and it's very, very hard to believe. And there's definitely been a lot of people in the county who fell out of love with modern football in terms of Galway's inability to adapt, and it took Galway a long, long time. And I think we've had Kevin Walsh on a couple of times. Kevin was caught between a rock and a hard place, where he came from the old tradition, but had to make Galway into a far more defensive team. As you mentioned, Pádraig Joyce tried to sort of marry the two of them and maybe play more expansive, but he's had to go back a little bit. But it's only now, I think, that Galway football fans are back somewhere to like it was in 98, where that they really are behind the team again, because a lot of the traditionalists in Galway, and it's not like, oh, we're great in Galway, but a lot of the traditionalists in Galway really struggled with the way we were playing. All right.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we got on OTB Sports Radio for you today. 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is an Irish football special with Shay Given, Niall Quinn and Jason McEntee. Our latest episode of Koi Gig for the Euros is live from 3 o'clock today. Retro panel dealing with disappointment. OTB Gold is Gooch, the autobiography, and the show is live tonight with Brian O'Driscoll joining. There'll be an All-Ireland final preview special alongside Colin Boyle and Enda McGinley as well. You can follow Off the Ball across our social channels, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the very latest in sports content and analysis. We're back after the break with the 2014 All-Ireland winner Barry John Keane of Kerry. First, here's Jack O'Connor talking ahead of the final and the threat that is Galway's Damien Comer.
Is both play maybe a similar style? You've brought in maybe that more defensive tactic. Is that something that Paddy Talley has brought in this year? A lot of people would throw his name around when we mentioned working defensively, because last year I think they were the questions that people asked at Kerry, that defensively they weren't strong enough.
Yeah, look, we have 3 or 4 of us involved in the coaching, and we all contribute our own areas. But yeah, we've been happy enough with our defence this year that we've been a bit tighter and a bit sounder. But you know, Galway have some serious firepower and have a lethal full forward line, so that system will be well tested Sunday.
How do you stop Damien Comer?
Not easily. No, he's a powerful man, very direct, and you know, was very, very good in the semi-final against a renowned defence like Derry. So he's going to take serious watching.
And they have a lot of experience on the line with Pádraig Joyce.
They have, and Keane O'Neill. You know, both who've been at the cutting edge of this thing, and. You know, they won't lack there, but they're an impressive team, and they're a team that are improving all the time, so we're under no illusions about this one.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If you had to pick a greatest British footballer of all time, or even since Bobby Charlton, would you go along the Gareth Bale lines, or have another pick?
I think Kenny Dalglish should be pretty upset by that. If you want to say, is he the greatest since Dalglish? There's an argument for it. He won 3 European Cups with him. His link up with Rush as well. I mean, Rush has got an argument there as well. I mean, Rush was I think we don't realise now how good Rush was.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, we're delighted to be joined by the former Kerry footballer Barry John Keane ahead of the 2022 GAA All-Ireland Senior Football Championship Final, which takes place this Sunday in Croke Park, alongside former Galway player Gary Sice. Barry John teamed up with AIB to look ahead to one of the hashtag the toughest matches of the year between Galway and Kerry. For updates on the match, exclusive content and behind the scenes action from the Football Championship, follow AIB GAA on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Barry John, how are you getting on?
Thank you, Ben.
You've been poked and prodded by the media for the last 24 hours. What's the general tone of the line of questioning? Is it basically like, how much are you going to win by?
No, I'm kind of new to this now, so I'm not doing too bad so far. No, as the week goes on, I've watched the 2 games back. I think people are underestimating Galway, but I think, as I said already, if Kerry bring the performance that is needed, I think they should have enough.
We just had Lee Keegan on, and himself and Johnny were both making the point that the first 40-45 minutes of the game against Dublin took a lot out of them, and they were not out on their feet, but certainly Dublin came back into it. Part of me thinks that is Kerry's ambition this year, is to try and kill teams early, to just reach a level of intensity that's so difficult for the opposition to live with, that they've built that lead. And in the case against Dublin, it wasn't quite enough to get them over the line. They needed some heroics from Shawnee in the last seconds. But is there a feeling that, like, actually, if Kerry do get a lead, they'll be able to manage a game?
Yeah, I suppose in the last year, the only test they probably did get was the Dublin game. The Mayo game, if you look back on it, the first 50 minutes, Mayo were in the game and they got their purple patch, and I suppose they didn't take their chances. Now, if Conroy and O'Donoghue are there, who are their main marksmen, they might have made the game more interesting going down the last 20 minutes. But in the Dublin game, over the last 10 years, every time you meet him, you know the purple patch is coming, so you have to just, I don't know, ride it out maybe. The goal, if Shawnee got the penalty, it would have given them a bit more breathing space. They might have been able to set up a bit differently, but I think they plugged away. They didn't force anything in the last 20 minutes. They kept possession. They took their scores. There might have been goal chances on my party. It was true, but he took a point. He knew how clinical that would have been. And look, the Dublin are champions 7 or 8 times for no reason. They brought it back, and luckily enough, we got the rubber green with the free at the end. Mostly, it was on the other side for the last few years.
Are you concerned about Galway?
Yeah, to be honest, I think they're well set up. I think the Galway that we were used to show the last 10 minutes of extra time against Armagh. They were up 6 or 7 points, and they just left them back into it. They held on in extra time. Getting over that with the penalties was probably massive, but especially the last day, it was kind of similar Galway the last few years. They're down 3 points, a bit shaky, but they held to the game plan. They got in for all, and even though it was a draw, it seemed like they were in the driving seat, and they took the game into their own control then and saw it out. So they're just going to be coming in with loads of confidence. I don't think they're going to think, oh, we have a free shot here. They're still going to be hurt. I know it's a while back, but Kerry gave them a demolition in Tralee. So they're going to learn a few things. And as I just heard there, Jack said, Patrick Joyce is around a long while. Keane O'Neill has been with all the top teams, so he'll have his homework done for Kerry as well.
Are Kerry in any way bruised from last year, when obviously, you know, they were basically supposed to win the All-Ireland and it just collapsed on them?
I don't think so. Look, after big losses like that, and even at any level, you'll probably dissect it for a week, and you can't just live off it. You try to learn off it, take a few things out of it, and just move on and improve. And I said they freshened up. They freshened up the management. The few players have come in, and I think they'll just put last year behind them and try to improve. And they have, to be fair. I know they haven't been tested in Munster, and probably the Dublin game is the only real test they've had. So the next day, it's going to bring different. Their lads are going to set up well Galway, and if Comer and Shane Walsh can put in a performance that people know they can, it could go down to the stretch. But if Kerry get in control of their 2 main forwards and they can get enough possession into the lads, then Kerry should be okay.
It's mad looking at that game in Tralee, May 15, 2021. Kerry 4-21, Galway 11 points. Sensational Clifford grabs 3-6, so he got 15 points, Galway got 11. And I mean, is there any relevance at all now?
Yeah, that could totally happen again this weekend. That's that is on the cards. This is the coming out party for the greatest footballer of all time.
Over to you, Larry John.
Yeah, I can, but if you go back to last year, Tyrone kind of got the same touch in Killarney. They conceded 6 or 7 goals, and then COVID hit, and there was a bit of a break, and then Kerry probably were waiting around for 2 weeks when Tyrone got their break, and it was rescheduled, and look, they got caught up. Kerry had the chances that day. They had goal chances they didn't take, and Tyrone got into extra time and scored the big scores at clinical time. So it can be controlled in a way. I think Kerry have set up better in the last few years. I think they're more I wouldn't say defensively, but they're being Paddy Tally probably has implemented a more tactic and tried to break on the counter. Galway have done the same. Derry would have tested that. I thought Derry were probably my team as a championship coming out of Ulster, and to be fair, for the first 40 minutes they looked fine, but then Galway just took over. So that's a big plus for Galway, that they might have gone up another level as well. So it's hard to tell.
What's the build-up been like down there? You're notoriously chilled out about all aspects of life down there.
Yeah, the years I was involved, it was probably a bit more. No, I was probably in the bubble, but there was more atmosphere. But I think Kerry know they got over Dublin, but the job isn't done yet. So maybe this week now we'll pick up a little bit. But there's, other than tickets, there's not much talk other than maybe Gavin White is touching and going. Other than that, there's nothing coming out of the camp.
Yeah, we're hearing Gavin White's probably going to be fit to play. That's the rumour. Compared with like after the game, it's like, oh, he's definitely gone. So that's a big boost for them if he is fit.
Yeah, well, Paul Murphy will probably slot in anyway, or Gavin Crowley if he's not. But two very good players, but different type of players. I think Galway will be happy to see Gavin White injured because he can break that line. He has that power. So time will tell. I don't think Kerry will change much besides that injury. Darren Moynihan might come in for Jim O'Connor, whichever way Kerry want to go at it. So, like I said, there's not much coming out of it. I can.
In the All-Ireland final that you guys won against Donegal, it was a very tight, cagey match, and I think we probably expected that with that Donegal team anyway. Galway can do the same. They can also play it tight and cagey, or they can get into a shootout. Which of these is more likely, do you think?
I think both could happen. I think the first 20 minutes, I think both teams are going to be just get their stalls set up at the back and try to take oxygen off both sets of forwards, try to man-to-man Clifford, man-to-man Comer, and a bit of help, and vice versa above. And I think like last weekend, the goal there, no one knew the goal was going to come that quick, and it just opened the game up, and there was fireworks. So I agree with you. Galway can play both ways, but I think Kerry have more individual forwards that can score than Galway.
And that's going to tip it in their favour, and that's why they're favourites, and that's why they're going to win.
I presume so. They're not going to be looking at it that way. They're just. I think they're just going to. The performance is the main thing for Kerry. They know the first 20 minutes are going to be probably something they haven't seen yet this year as defensively. How Jack sets them up on the counter, if they're going to bring back Shane Walsh and Comer, and then they're going to run it, because you see the way Currow Finn play, and there's 3 or 4 of them boys there. They can run the ball, and they don't cough it up easily. Like, they don't just pass it for the sake of passing it. So that's the other thing. Are Kerry going to leave 1 or 2 back just in case, or push up? We've seen in games similar this year that there's nearly 28, 30 players. The keeper's nearly up most of the time inside one half. So there's a lot of space. Whoever wants to break into that then that's up to them if they want to take that gamble.
Just don't bring the goalie out.
Yeah, the goal. Yeah, from the last. He was brave enough. I thought he was brave enough coming up. Never mind having a pot.
Are there tickets floating around? It seems like the demand is a little bit less than in some previous years.
Yes and no. I think yesterday there was a collection, and it was busy. It was busy getting them, but I think there's another lot coming maybe Thursday. So I'm not too sure, but I think Galway, whatever they get, I think Galway will travel. Like, what is it, 20, 21 years? Like, they'll bring as much as they can and bring as much colour as they can. Kerry will travel, but there's still that, I wouldn't say nerves, but this one has to get over the line like the Dublin game. leading up to that, no one was saying we about losing. We have to win. We have to win. We can't look at another year of rebuilding again and going at it, because to be fair, looking back at the game again, as much as Kerry won, it could have went the other way, and you stick Con O'Callaghan in there, like they're not gone away.
No, not for now, but we'll come back to that one next year. Barry John, enjoy the game. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No problem. Thank you.
That's Barry John Keane there as part of AIB's The Toughest campaign. Right, we're live every morning with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Back tomorrow morning at 7:30. A Galway preview special ahead of the All-Ireland Senior Football Final. So long as Owen Sheehan can make it there. He's had some car trouble along the way.
There you go, yeah.
It's like the British Rail, not made for the weather.
Must see what the great man is doing Sunday. Lots of people up from home. Will Kerry travel? I mean, if you're not going to travel for an All-Ireland final, do you travel for anything? I know there is a cost of living crisis, but I believe they've done new trains to bring you up and back on the day and so on, which is a big help.
Royal Armour says there's not a premium corner forward in the country who doesn't get attention. Walsh and Comer are well able to handle themselves, and no shrinking violets. Walsh can't be anonymous for 70 minutes. I don't think he was anonymous.
No. And again, it is when Shane Walsh is being double marked, that does create spaces elsewhere. You mentioned it, Ger, that
keeps possession, all the attacks come down his side.
Totally.
You know.
And he's freeze against Derry. And you can't downplay how important and how amazingly good he is. And there is that moment where you do wonder, like Shane Walsh's pass. I mean, we spoke about Shamrock Rovers giving a goal away in the 4th minute of injury time. Shane Walsh's pass to lose possession against Armagh. I mean, but that could have been catastrophic. And then it worked out in the end.
Big Coach Owens. Philip Nolan says, I'm not sure any Galway forward would start for Dublin. Philip has obviously not watched any football this year, where the toothless Dublin full forward line, Shane Walsh would start, Comer would start. If Comer had been playing for the Dubs in the semi-final, Dublin with Comer would be in the All-Ireland final.
I think Finnerty will have a better game Sunday. We have good forwards. We have good forwards. We won't be lacking in that department.
All right. We're going to leave you with John Bruin on the manic transfer window that has been summer 2022. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Tuesdays Off the Ball. Richie McCormick here with you until 10 o'clock tonight. A little bit later on, we'll be talking to ex-Dundalk boss Vinnie Perth in the wake of Shamrock Rovers' 3-0 defeat away to Ludogorets in the second qualifying round of the Champions League. Rovers right up against it ahead of the return leg in Tallaght Stadium a week from tonight. But first, joining us to discuss all manner of issues, we'll get to Manchester United and their pre-season tour of Australia and the forever booing of Harry Maguire momentarily. But John Bruin joins us on the line. I'm delighted to say welcome back to the show, John.
Good evening, Richie. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. I know you're a bit of an aficionado as it comes to football documentaries. I know this Arsenal All or Nothing would have caught your eye a little bit later on. What did you make? It's hard to gauge anything by the trailer. What did you make of Mikel and co from the bit we've seen so far?
Well, I've got the press release this afternoon, and clicked on the YouTube. Very much son of Pep Guardiola. Overuse for guys, and those set pieces in the Arsenal dressing room looked quite similar to the Pep Guardiola stuff from City's version. That was an All or Nothing as well, wasn't it?
I think so.
I'm told actually that Mikel was not fully on board with this project, and I think if you actually look at his mentions of it in his press conferences last season, you would see that. With all these things, there's that element, isn't there, where it feels very, very staged. He's not a natural performer like Jose Mourinho, who I think saw that as a chance to soften his public image, and I think that worked actually. And Pep Guardiola, Pep is a guy, I think he's had 4 or 5 documentaries made about him. He's pretty comfortable in that arena. I'm not sure Mikel Arteta is quite so comfortable, though. If I may say, there's someone who seems quite fond of himself, so maybe he might grow into that a bit more.
Yeah, I'd say if there's a Series 2, Mikel will suddenly find himself on board with that. Do you think, like you mentioned there, is overuse of the term guys? I remember, when I worked in HMV many moons ago, they used to have this managerial system whereby people would go through, they'd be almost like regional kind of, team leaders, etc. So they'd be underneath the assistant manager and the manager. One of the things I remember learning is that they were encouraged to call everybody mate And in managerial courses in HMV, you're encouraged to call everybody mate. Like, is this a thing from La Masia where you have to call everybody guys? Or, you know, there has to be a certain trigger word to make sure that there's a level of friendly that's not too friendly, but it's friendly enough. Also has a bit of an air of authority.
I've long had a problem with the word guys. I've always felt it's quite insincere. But when I go back up to the northwest of England, I hear that it's used quite a lot. It's used quite a lot in restaurants. You know, people come over, you know, is everything all right there, guys? You know, that type of thing. And I think Pep, who is, you know, an Atlanticist and spent a bit of time in America, of course, which is, I think, where he's probably learned the majority of his, say, verbal English, picked it up. And Arteta, I mean, Arteta spent 10 years playing in England, didn't he, before he became a manager. Was probably followed along with that one. But, yeah, I've always... It feels insincere, but it's also like an international word, if you see what I mean. It's almost like an Esperanto term. Sort of CNN in your hotel room when you're sat in Bulgaria with nothing to do, that type of thing, that type of word.
Translate towards the different kind of people involved in a dressing room, whether they be Brazilians or French or Spanish or you know, from West Africa or wherever it happens to be.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's got international recognition, I suppose. The word mate probably yet to be used in one of the natives of Recife or somewhere like that, you would have thought.
Well, you see, Eddie Jones, the England rugby manager, has dominion over the word mate, which kind of punctuates every sentence that he says. So I don't think there's many left to go around for other people around there. Like I've mentioned it before 9 o'clock there. Like in terms of the football documentaries, the behind the scenes, flying the wall stuff. My one is always the go-to is the City documentary from '81. That Granada produced, Malcolm Allison going, John Bond coming in, and the pantomime villain. Like, none of these docs that I've seen in the past while, they kind of have a softening image, as you say, for the likes of Mourinho, or they try to get you a bit of personality for the likes of Guardiola or Arteta. You don't get a pantomime villain like Peter Swales in these documentaries these days, unfortunately.
Well, I think part of that is that people like Peter Swales don't exist anymore. I mean, that there is a man very much of his time. He also makes a wonderful cameo in the Graham Taylor documentary as well. I think he was chairman of one of the FA boards or something. Yeah, an amazing performer. And of course, that documentary you talk about there's that sort of set piece, isn't there, between Malcolm Allison and John Bond, who'd actually known each other for, I think, 30 years or so at the time, both who'd come through West Ham, and this sort of enmity between them. And again, actually, they don't make him like Big Mal anymore. It would be pretty interesting, actually, if Mikel Arteta decided to wear a fedora, sip champagne, bring pastry models into the bath, which is all what Malcolm Allison did. Maybe that's for the next series, as you suggested might happen.
Yeah, I think the idea of Mikel appearing in the first 5 minutes shirtless, strutting around the Manchester City or the Arsenal dressing room as it is in this case is probably going to be a little bit beyond them. John, we're going to get back to you on matters current in a moment, but we're going to take a brief ad before that. We were talking beforehand about Mikel Arteta and his foray into the world of documentary with that new All or Nothing series that's coming to Amazon Prime. It distracts and detracts a little bit away from the inanity, John, of pre-season, because during the course of the last few days I've seen headlines like Manchester United are back given their level of performance under Eric Ten Hag in their pre-season friendly so far, and Liverpool's Darwin Núñez is under pressure despite the fact he hasn't played a competitive game for them yet. The main headline today, though, that jumped out of United's pre-season game with Crystal Palace was the booing yet again of Harry Maguire. It's if it wasn't silly before, I think it definitely is now.
Yeah, it feels to me as if those supporters over in Australia, and there were many tens of thousands of them in the MCG, were almost like copycat behaviour of what went on at Old Trafford. Now, I used to attend Old Trafford at a time when it was strictly verboten to boo any players. And I think the first I remember this ever happening to was Neil Webb when he left the pitch very slowly during a vital game against Nottingham Forest. And then it would probably be nearly 20 years until it happened again when things started going a bit wrong for Manchester United. I have a lot of sympathy for Harry Maguire. I think he played a lot of last season injured. I think he was a player who has to fit into a system. The system he fits into best is that the England player under Gareth Southgate, not the one that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had to play when Cristiano Ronaldo came into the team, and it didn't work either when Ralph Rangnick was there. I think it's fair to say that there is this idea, which I wouldn't disagree with, that Harry Maguire, 80 million, was overpriced. And I used to watch him play for Hull City and think, there's a promising player. I wonder how far he'll go. And I never thought he'd end up captain of Manchester United. But then again, I never thought he'd star for England in a run to the semi-finals of the World Cup and the final of Euro 2020. So there is a player there. I don't think it helps fans booing him, and that's always been my sense of being a supporter and also a player as well. And of course, back in the days of Neil Webb, you didn't have social media, and of course that adds further fuel to the fire, and so that means that fans in Australia are able to copy that behaviour. Who's getting anything out of booing Harry Maguire? If you're a Manchester United fan, and these people may not be Manchester United fans, they might be a rogue group of Crystal Palace fans down in Melbourne, but what are they getting out of that? What booing the player? It's not going to make him any better, is it? That would be mine.
I think the the Melbourne booing is a case, like you mentioned, of monkey see, monkey do. Like they've seen the Old Trafford fans towards the middle part latter end of last season, when things were just really toxic at United and really did need an overhaul and a change. And the sense was, the excuses you heard as regards for the booing was, well, we're not necessarily booing him, we're booing the concept of playing an out-of-form player in a failing team, and things like that need changing. It doesn't really hold water when it's a pre-season friendly in Melbourne against Crystal Palace. And I don't think it will hold water when they have a new manager in there now who's insistent that he retains the captaincy.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, if you look at United's transfer business, they brought in Lisandro Martinez, they've already got Rafael Varane. There will be those who don't like or don't trust Harry Maguire, that would expect him to move out of the team. But one of the things about Maguire is that within a club which is listing pretty badly, he does provide that element of leadership. Okay, we can say that Solskjaer as a manager was ultimately, it didn't happen for him, but I think Maguire was an important player and a player that delivered. And the last year or so he's played badly, but I don't know. I mean, as I say, Maguire, there is a player there. There is someone that can produce something for Manchester United, and I would imagine the hope is, and Ten Hag appears to believe, that if you set up your midfield, that you don't expose your centre back who isn't particularly pacey, then you can make something of that team and make something of a player who is actually a good organiser of a defence and seems to have a pretty decent relationship with the goalkeeper in David De Gea. I don't know. I've actually been to the Melbourne Manchester United Supporters Club back in 1998 when I was but a young man.
Okay.
And we watched England playing the World Cup in 1998, and my main memory of it is that as I left the Harry Ramsden's chippy in which this was held, we walked into the streets, which turned out to be those where Ramsey Street is based. Neighbours, the now late lamented TV programme. So I wonder if they still base themselves there. Judging by some of the social media videos, it seems to have gone to a bigger place than that these days. But the people I met down there did not seem the type that would boo a Manchester United player, but times have moved on, haven't they?
Yeah, I think fan bases for clubs have kind of grown a little bit since then. They're probably a little bit more closely held at the time. I think the sense that there's a sense of ownership around the team for people that are based in the Far East or in Australia or in America, etc., in a way that I don't think there was before. They felt like they were maybe clinging on to the coattails of a team before, whereas now they really, there is a global sense to these clubs, to the Liverpools, the Manchester Uniteds, that people in America, people in Australia, people in Singapore and Malaysia do hold a little bit of sway in terms of their opinion.
Well, yeah, and I suppose that comes down to the finances, doesn't it? When
Yeah.
you hear people like Richard Arnold, the CEO, speak, they place great importance in attracting those markets, and you can see the way that, ultimately these tours around the world are not what any manager would like for their players. Arsene Wenger was a manager who absolutely loathed going on these tours because it would mean his players were in no condition to start the season. Going to Australia and kicking off in 2.5, 3 weeks or whatever does not seem very sensible, but it is such a huge part of the profit and loss sheet for these clubs that they have to service these deals, and that's part of it. And as you say, again, social media has given people an ownership of being a Manchester United fan rather than just, they were pretty much used as a cash register before, they still are, but there is that extra stake in there now, isn't there? The social media thing has added that extra dimension, not necessarily always a positive one, but here we are.
I'm still trying to imagine the Neil Webb scenario being played out on social media, particularly how Shelley Webb may have handled that or otherwise back in the early 90s, and probably another story for another day. People probably need to look that up. Social media obviously has a massive influence. I don't know, it's probably too strong a word, but it's a vocal thing as regards transfer business. And Manchester United have obviously, needed to clear out. There's probably one massive asset that maybe needs to be shifted on, and they don't know whether or not that can happen or not. But as regards the incomings, there's still a lot of question marks. Like the Lisandro Martinez deal still has to be, rubber stamped, and they seem to be waiting on this Frankie de Jong signing to happen to such a degree. You're kind of wondering, well, did you not have an alternative in case this doesn't work out? Because there's every chance that this won't.
Yeah. I think the dread scenario for Manchester United fans is a midfielder, Fred and Scott McTominay, lining up, both of whom I should say, by the way, I think are decent players, but probably need a better player around them. Listen, if I was in business or the football business, I really would not be wanting to rely on Barcelona at this point. Their activities appear to be a little shifty, if I can say that. Owing the guy 17 million euros or whatever it is, and then expecting him not to want that money because he loves the club. Well, that's an interesting way of looking at things, isn't it? And you have this scenario where, I mean, you're absolutely correct. It's almost like a Manchester United tradition, though, isn't it? Those big players that United have looked at, fans have pinned their hopes on all summer, and then they've not arrived. I mean, we had Cesc Fabregas infamously back in the summer of 2013. Before that, Wesley Sneijder was linked every summer. I remember there was one, Mesut Ozil was one. Yeah, obviously. Alex Ferguson was caught watching him in a pre-season game, and that got everyone's hopes up, and he went to Real Madrid instead. And there just seems to be this one player that. And what often happens is that they maybe arrive the next year. Ander Herrera was one as well. Remember all that messing around with lawyers and stuff like that. Manchester United get themselves in these terrible tangles, played out publicly. They get played by the Spanish clubs who see Manchester United coming a little bit. De Jong, obviously a talented player, and very talented, and obviously Ten Hag will know him well. But I'm not sure that the player that I've seen when I've watched Barcelona is quite worth this fuss. I don't know quite what I'm supposed to be seeing here. And actually, the fact that Barcelona are willing to get rid of him suggests they hold a not dissimilar view to me on that as well.
Yeah, the Barcelona situation is an odd one because clearly, like I read the other day, that they're using money they're getting for a rights sale now rather than using it sensibly going forward and going big now to maybe try and bring the success that they had in recent years. But owing, as you say, 17 million to one player and them not willing to cough it up despite the fact that they're finding it for Robert Lewandowski is another story. As I mentioned, that asset that probably needs to go, Cristiano Ronaldo, like, do we know what the feeling is around the club as regards whether or not he should go, whether they want him to leave, whether that thing of he's part of our plans, he's going to spearhead our attack, like, is that all for show, or is there a sense behind the scenes that, we're actually pretty better off getting rid of this lad?
Well, the thing is, Ten Hag and his sit down with reporters, which would have been Sunday night going into Monday, appeared to. I don't get the impression that Ten Hag has yet moved into the world of Ferguson style kidology. Seems to suggest that he's okay with him being around. Though again, maybe he has to say that. Maybe there's commercial deals tied up, but ultimately there is someone who is tying up an enormous amount of wages. And as I said, if you look back 12 months ago, before Cristiano Ronaldo had signed for Manchester United, a lot of people were tipping Manchester United to challenge for the title under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Ronaldo arrived, and within weeks, it was clear that Manchester United were not going to challenge for the title. Now, you can't roll the clock back, of course not, but you can rectify that mistake by trying to get him off the books. And the thing is, with someone like Ronaldo, because he's his own nation state, it's left to him and his representative, George Mendes, and various other acolytes, to ship him around all these clubs. Bayern Munich don't want him. Atletico Madrid don't want him. There was a link with Sporting Lisbon that came up just the other day, which seems to me to be quite sensible. One of the stipulations is Ronaldo wants to play Champions League football. Sporting Lisbon, who he's made his bones as a player. I think the only public pronouncement we've had on this from Ronaldo is that this was a fake. Well, that's the one that made the most sense to me. Not that Sporting Lisbon could afford to pay him any money, but then why does he need the money? Ronaldo's future, if you think about it, was sorted out very late in the transfer window last year. I expect this saga will be played out over a similar timescale this year. It's deeply tedious. It's the question that everyone gets asked, and no one really knows the answer to it. And you have to suspect that it's almost like a Gordian knot for United and Ronaldo himself. A lot of face is trying to be saved at the moment, but someone's going to have to lose face at a certain point, aren't they?
It's interesting that there are this handful of players like Ronaldo, Neymar would fit into that as well, that are so big, and the notion of them rather than the reality of them is so big that there's no room for them to go. Like, Ronaldo has reached a point whereby his wages have ballooned to such a degree that there's only a handful that can afford to pay them, and within that handful, only Manchester United at the moment seem to want him, and even then, that's a bit iffy. Similarly, Galtier's gone in at PSG and decided that he doesn't want any bling football anymore. Neymar is the kind of red flag towards all of that. There's no way that anybody else can afford the wages. So you end up having these really talented, aging footballers who nobody really wants because nobody can really afford them, and you're kind of wondering who are they for then, and what purpose do they serve?
Yeah, and you've got this idea of sort of almost solo acts, haven't you? Joining some sort of super group. I think, and that is a model that's failed at PSG. We've seen that. I think if Galtier, who's clearly a very, very good manager, is given the chance to construct a proper PSG team around Kylian Mbappe, they might have a decent chance of putting together a decent team. They've signed a player whose name escapes me, that Newcastle wanted, the young striker.
Ekitike.
Yes, that's the guy.
Yeah.
He's really good. Yeah, and that's the type of signing that a club like PSG that's progressive should be wanting to make. Not signing the next, or signing Lionel Messi, for example, who is still at PSG, let us be clear.
Yeah.
Now, there was some talk over the last couple of days into Miami, some big talk that maybe they would like Lionel Messi for their project. I'm sure PSG, underneath all this, would really like that to happen soon. But again, like the Ronaldo thing, you can't admit it for whatever reason, because you might lose social media likes, you might lose sponsorship opportunities. And so, you have these listing Titanic-style ships moving around the waters of football. Listen, the Ronaldo and Messi era has been wonderful football, but I think it's come to an end, and it's like all of these things, like all political careers, they sort of end in some element of failure as well, don't they? I mean, the hope would be for both of them they sign off with a World Cup or something like that, But then again, you've got this scenario where Ronaldo thinks he can play till he's 40. Well, who seriously is going to do that? And I remember, back years ago, older players would drop down. Kevin Keegan to Newcastle.
Yeah.
Johan Cruyff left Ajax Amsterdam and went to Feyenoord and then won the league just because he could in Holland, just to show them. Now, do any of those players you mentioned, Neymar, Messi, Ronaldo, do they not just fancy one last job, like the Dirty Dozen or something like that, and just to pull a club up by its bootstraps, be a hero somewhere smaller, go to a club, say like Marseille or even Newcastle, who could probably afford that, and become a hero for coming to those clubs. It seems that that's not part of the model these days. They have to be attached to these other blue chip companies, and Ronaldo is going to end up almost in exile from the game that's made him, that he has made himself.
There just needs to be a sense of reality about them, that you can't necessarily keep earning 400, 500 grand a week just because of the name. Like you mentioned there, and it's kind of brilliantly detailed in that new Cruyff biography that's out there, like of Cruyff going to Feyenoord and doing it because he can. Now, there was a sense at the time he needed to keep playing because he needed the money. I don't think Cristiano Ronaldo needs the money, so maybe kind of temper your expectations a little bit. Take that move to, like, what was the one recently? It was like Arjen Robben went back to Groningen in Holland because there's a team and enjoyed it. Yeah, so like that final chapter, that kind of valedictory thing of taking another team and being the big fish and bringing a little bit of stardust to them, that would be, and they'd be remembered fondly, more fondly than they would be for demanding 400k to play the odd match here and there for a big blue chip company, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and another thing that you do wonder is about enjoying the football. Now there's been this story, hasn't there, about Ronaldo over the summer, these very detailed reported pieces on where it went wrong for Ralph Rangnick last season. And one of these ideas was that Ronaldo wanted training at Manchester United to be, in inverted commas, fun. Yeah, he didn't want to do the hard sweat, the pressing work that a coach like Ralph Rangnick would push. Now, if you want things to be fun, maybe go somewhere where you're allowed to. At Manchester City, he clearly was allowed to do what he liked, but somewhere where people are going to listen, follow your lead, and there must be a small club in France, Sporting Lisbon would be a fine example, that he could go to and just keep living the dream, and he can still play for Portugal. And there was always this idea with Messi, wasn't it, that he'd go back to Rosario, back to Newell's Old Boys. When's that going to happen? The romance has gone out of the game a bit, hasn't it, with stuff like that.
Just a bit. Even going back to Neil Webb taking his last lap around Forest again to bring it back to the old midfield general at Old Trafford and the City Ground. Listen, everything always comes back to Neil Webb. It always does. John Brown, thanks so much for taking time out to speak to us this evening.
Lovely to talk to you, Richie.
And you, mind yourself. We'll be talking Shamrock Rovers European exploits with Vinnie Perth next.
Off the ball on News Talk.